Hello and welcome to another edition of Turned Out a Punk. I'm your host, Damian Abraham. Once again, I'm bringing you a conversation with someone who grew up listening to punk, may or may not still be involved with punk, but had their life changed by the genre in a major way. And today on the show, a good friend of mine, someone I had not had a chance to talk to in a very long time, and I'm so grateful that the show gave me a chance to reconnect with him, from the band Righteous Jammes, from the band Wrecking Crew, from the band 454 Big Block, from the band Skeletal Ambitions, from the TV series where he's the head writer and showrunner, The Mayans. ELGIN James is on the show, and this is the longest episode of this podcast ever, and I am very excited for you to hear this. More on that in 1 second, but first, if you want to get in touch with me, head over to the email address, turnedoutapunkpodcast@gmail.com. That is run by my brother and show producer and guest booker extraordinaire, Tristan Abraham, and he will get the message to me. You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram at Left4Damian. If you want to support the show, the best way to support the show is by telling all your friends about this podcast, letting everyone know that we have this podcast where we put out a couple episodes a week. Normally it's about a couple episodes a week where I talk to someone about how they got into punk and we go from there. You can also support this podcast by subscribing to it and rating it on your podcast platform of choice. You can further support this podcast. There's a lot of ways to support this thing now by heading over to turnedoutapunk.com, especially if you're in America. Right now we're trying to figure out something for Canada because I know the shipping's a little difficult for Canada right now, but go to turnedoutapunk.com and check out the t-shirts that we have put up. My friend Corey and at Demented by Design has helped me put this together, and I've done a run of shirts. There will be more coming out, different ones soon. And they're designed by myself, and I think my dad did one too, which is our logo t-shirt. But so head on over there and check out those shirts. You can also support the podcast by heading over to patreon.com, and a huge thank you to everyone that does do that. It means a lot to this podcast, and check out some of the stuff I put up on there, video editions of the show, footnotes, things like that. That is that. Oh, wait, no, one more thing. Speaking of support, huge thank you to my friends at the Vans and the House of Vans in particular, who have supported this podcast for a while now. They came aboard a few years ago and said, Damian, do what you do, just don't do it out of your own pocket, and we will help you cover the cost of doing this thing, and which has been fantastic. The other thing that's amazing is that they have now announced the reopening of the House of Vans in Chicago, which is a incredible building. I was just there a couple weeks ago, where they have shows and I think, all sorts of events there. It's a great space, skate park as well, and things like that. So very excited that's reopening. Oh, I feel like things are kind of coming back. Speaking of coming back, the band I play in, Fucked Up, is going to be going on tour coming in January. We're going to be celebrating the 10th anniversary of our album, David Comes to Life. And you can pick that up on Matador Records, who will be reissuing it. We'll also be putting out Epics in Minutes, which is our singles compilation on the great Get Better Records. And finally, our friend Scotty Karate at Tank Crimes Records will be putting out The Year of the Horse, our hour-and-a-half long song, on vinyl, and it will be coming out very shortly. So head over to those labels and order them, or check out fuckedup.cc for show dates and all sorts of stuff around the band Fucked Up. All right. On to today's show, and this is a good one, everyone. I've known ELGIN for a while. I first met him back when he was playing in Righteous Jammes. Fucked Up did a lot of shows with Righteous Jammes. Not a lot, but we did a few shows with them, and we hung out and always had great conversations. We'd always sit there and talk about music or whatever, and just talk for literally hours, as you will hear in this episode. And to watch him kind of go from this guy where he admittedly talks about this in the episode, who was, it's fair to say, I think he even says in the episode, was addicted to violence and caught up in some very heavy stuff, and then transitioning to this Hollywood world where he is now writing a hit TV show, is very respected as a writer by some of the biggest names in Hollywood. You'll hear this. This is an incredible journey. I gotta warn you that I left in some language that is pretty heavy, but it's what was hurled with hate at Elgin because of who he is. So it's part of his experience. I left it in there, but I want to warn people that in advance that there is some pretty heinous language that is used in this episode, but in context, you'll hear it when it's used. And there's also some pretty heavy talk about violence and things that he went through over the years as well. So it is a heavy episode as well. There's certainly some levity and things like that, but we're talking about some pretty real shit in this one. And that is it. I don't really have anything else to add. Check out The Mayans on FX, third season. A great show, and amazing to know it comes from the place it comes from. And yeah, anyway, I'm not going to ramble on because this is a long one. I think I might even have a hard time exporting it. I'm saying this obviously before I export this file, but I think this one's going to come in at the time mark that challenges this computer with the output. But anyway, that's for me to worry about. You sit back, relax, and enjoy ELGIN James on Turned Out a Punk. ELGIN, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Bro, I can't believe we're finally doing this. This is crazy. Been talking about it forever.
I know. This is a huge thrill because even before we started talking about it, just kind of watching there's no other way to put it, your ascent in the world of, film and TV. I've always been like, as I was starting the show, I'm like, fuck, I would love to have him on the show so we could talk about the journey from Wrecking Crew to this. So to have you here now and be able to do this.
Well, at the same time, bro, you have been killing it. It's been amazing to watch you just take over the world. You and Fucked Up. It's phenomenal, man. I get so proud. And anytime anything always happens, I'm like, yo, that's my boy. That's my boy. So it's been wild to watch you guys achieve what you have.
Well, getting to have a song on the show when you reached out and stuff, and then simultaneously you reached out, Mike from the band Fucked Up hit me up at the same time and was like, yo, this request just came through. Is that ELGIN from Righteous Jam's show? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, we got to approve it. And normally with Mike, there's always he and I don't always see eye to eye on shit. So, but yeah, getting to play with you early on and doing those shows with you, it's awesome to watch the ride. But I got to start this off the way they all start off, which is, ELGIN, how did you get into punk? Do you remember the first time you ever came across the genre?
I apologize because this may take up the whole entire time that we have slotted. But I was like a little kid. I was in like 5th or 6th grade, and my mom was talking to our neighbor, right? Mrs. Digamus was her name, and her house would later burn down. And I was not responsible for that, I promise. But they were talking about punk rock, and they were talking about like how they would puke on the audience and how they cut themselves and how disgusting that was. And I was like, you're 9, 10 years old, whatever I was. I'm like, that sounds awesome. Like, what is this punk rock? And it came because my foster brother at the time, Gladwin, had started a band, right? Pretty similar after this or soon after this, called The Change. And he would, all of a sudden, so he got into punk rock, this West Indian dude, and all his friends would come over. This one dude that I was just like, thought was the coolest dude in the world, named Glenn Riley, Yellow Bug. And they'd come over and they'd be in this band, they'd start this band, but Gladwin would always listen to stuff on his headphones. So I had no idea what punk was. I knew he was into it. I had no idea. It wasn't the internet. Anything, couldn't find out what the hell punk was at this time. And so I was like obsessed with it. I was obsessed with it, trying to figure out. And I was like, I was 10, like over 10 years younger. They wanted nothing to do with me. So I used to always watch Don Kirshner's rock concert. I don't know if you remember the show that existed, right? And
it comes up from time. Yeah, it comes up from time to time. It seems like it was like such a great jumping on point for people.
Does it really? It really was, because you could see live music, and this is before MTV. So it was right there in your living room. And there's another show like Midnight Special or something that was on after it or around the same time. And I would watch this, and it had Kiss. They had, I remember the Billy Squier. This is all you could find at the time. You remember Billy Squier?
Yeah, absolutely.
He was in a band with the dude from Dead Kennedys.
Really?
Yeah, he was in a band. I think it was with Klaus Flora. I think it was one of them with a dude when in Boston. Is that so weird? But I want to do plus. So weird.
Wow.
Look it up. I swear it's true.
Before the Dead
Yeah,
Kennedys?
before the Dead Kennedys. Yeah.
Oh, because he was like a player, right? So it must have been like was it like a rock band?
It was like a side rock band thing they did in Boston. This is like some weird thing that I learned over the years that every time Billy Squire comes up, I'm always just like, yeah, this dude was in a band. I think it was maybe Klaus Flora. I don't think it was East Bay Ray. But
that's awesome.
Are you looking up right now? I can see your eyes moving around.
Yeah, I'm trying to look it up right now to see if I can find it, but I can't find it. I'll look it up later. You perked my interest about that.
Yeah, I swear it's true, or I'm completely wrong. Either one could be true. So I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with trying to figure out what punk rock is.
Yeah.
Right? And so it was one night, and it's all, I mean, this is like a memory of a memory of a memory now at this point, right? Because we're several decades later. But this dude came on, and he was wearing like a black leather jacket or something, and he was just screaming, like the vocal cords, the cords in his neck were just screaming. He was jumping. At one point, he gets up on a piano, he starts jumping up and down. I was like, holy fuck, this is it. This is punk rock. This is punk rock. So I write down the name. I'm all excited. I steal. This is a few years after 1976, but they made these like $2 bills at the 19th for the whatever in America for the memorial several years later. But I stole them. My sisters had a bunch, so I stole their money, and then I went to this pharmacy kind of drugstore called Leaders, and I bought this record. Bring it home. So fucking fired up. Listen to it over and over again. It's all about like the streets. It's about the death of the American dream, like all this shit. And so Glenn Riley, when he's come, I probably listened to it like, 90 times in the first, just front to back, front to back, front to back. Totally changed my world, changed my life. Glenn Riley comes over in his little yellow bug for band practice, right? I'm all nervous. I'm just waiting, a little turntable and like these shitty little speakers and stuff. It's like, as soon as a dude comes in, they're going to think I'm so cool. I'm just going to fucking blare this. So he comes out. Front door opens, Gladwin's like, yo, man, come on up. He starts up the stairs. I just fucking drop that needle, and it's like, and it's fucking Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. And that was my foray into punk rock. So still, to me, punk has always been fucked up because Born to Run is a brilliant fucking record.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? It's all those things. And so that's how I discovered punk rock. And eventually, I would run away all the time to his kid Devin's house because his mom had like 4 kids and she was like 20. She was like super young. And so she knew how, things weren't safe in my house. So she let me stay there. And he had this cousin who I swear had a fake English accent, even though they said he's from England, but I know he's totally faking it. And he gave me a copy of Nevermind the Bollocks. And like, that was it. And then I caught up with what they're doing. And because that record is still one of the greatest records of all fucking time. I don't care what anybody says. And, and then right after that, dude, it was divine fate. I don't know what it was because we were in rural Connecticut at the time where I lived on this farm. And always, it was always the radio. It was always the radio trying to record, like everyone at that time, trying to record stuff off the radio. And I don't know if it was from a New York station, a college station. I don't know if it was actually Maximum Rock and Roll Radio or if they just spoke about it in there. I don't know what it was.
Well, they syndicated all these bands. Back then.
Was it then? Then that must have been it.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I think they syndicated it a little bit.
That must have been it then, because I was always, to this day, I've always been, but yeah, I found this thing called Maximum Rock and Roll, album called Not So Quiet in the Western Front that played a bunch of songs off it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I became 10 times fucking cooler than Gladwin or Glenn Riley, my fucking, these fucking posers. Because I would watch and they'd come to my elementary school and they'd skate all the time, right? And they'd be down there and they'd just be like, again, probably listening to, the Ramones and the Sex Pistols. And then quickly I was listening to like fucking Code of Honor and et cetera. And that was it. And that's how I discovered punk rock. And I had another sister who went to NYU. And so she gave me records in New York. And she came home once with 2 of her roommates, one of which was this new wave girl, kind of new wave-ish girl who ended up being Molly Shannon.
What?
Yeah. How weird is that?
I had no idea she was into that stuff at all.
Yeah. So she was new wave, but her other roommate was this woman, Veronica, who's like a ripped up tights, purple hair, was just like a straight punk rock kid in 81 or whenever this was, or 82. And she told my sister all the records to buy. So my sister would go to Crazy Eddie's when she was in New York, and it came home with like black. So I got Black Flag Damage, I got all these, et cetera, et cetera. And she changed my life.
That's
or
awesome.
Ruined my life. Either way you want to see. But dude, Bruce Springsteen, let's go here. Born to Run, brilliant fucking record. Never Mind the Bullocks, brilliant fucking record.
Well, I think going back to Bruce Springsteen first, he does have a lot of punk connections, like obviously the stuff with Patti Smith and the Ramones, you know, like it is kind of, I could see how at that time it could be confused as the other thing.
Right. Especially when you're like a fifth grader and you're an idiot. 100%. And then imagine how confused I was when I got Plastic Surgery Disasters and they were talking shit on fucking Terminal Preppy on Springsteen. I was like so conflicted.
But you're also, I 100% agree with you on Nevermind the Bollocks, one of the greatest albums of all time.
Yeah. There we go. And also we closed the door. We have a 6-month-old baby. So
congratulations. Holy.
Thanks, bro. Yeah. Oh Jesus, everything. It's crazy, right? It's crazy.
Everything. And it keeps getting different and changes. I find every 3, it's like in intervals of 3, it's like some new milestone or some new,
really,
like 3 months. I found 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, you know, like it's just every 3, like there's obviously milestones the whole way through, but like, yeah, right. I've got 12, 9, and 6 now. So
that's so crazy. It's also so crazy that I haven't seen you in that long because you didn't have any kids the last time I saw. Like when we stayed with you in Toronto.
Yeah, like, no,
that's crazy.
Laura and I are still together. That's
awesome.
That's who I married, and yeah, it's definitely been. It's wild how now you'll see the passage of time once you have kids is just so quick.
Bro, I can't even. It's been 6 months, and I can see it. And I remember Lauren quite well because I remember being at your guys' house and. Kelly Clarkson, Since You've Been Gone came on, and everything stopped, and I was just like, I remember looking at DFJ, I was just, oh, this is kind of silly, and then about like halfway through, I'm like, this song fucking rules.
It does.
I love that song now. It's a great fucking song, bro.
It's a tune, and it's funny because like we watch. Well, I don't watch it at all, but Lauren watches The Voice, and I watch it beside her, and I still root for Kelly Clarkson because of that song. I will always root for Kelly Clarkson.
Well, bro, every time I'm in a grocery store, just so you know, and that comes on, I still just brings me right back to you, Lauren, in Toronto.
Our dog Tilly, I don't think ever forgot you too. She was enamored with you. I remember that day.
She was the best, man. Dogs are the best.
But you also back to the Sex Pistols, as you're saying, that record it hits so hard, and like, you know, it's come up before on the show, but I find there's like that record is just like, I don't know, like it's a time and a place type thing. Like that couldn't have happened at any other point in music. Like that is such a watershed moment for, even though punk was kind of happening before it, obviously, but like, that's such a signpost in things to come.
I agree 100%. And I think, because I know people, you know, it's always, I know you guys have talked about it on the podcast before about like either the Clash or the Sex Pistols. And to me, it's always been the Sex Pistols. Like I like that first record, but everything after that, I was just I'm like, what is this? Like so bummed out on. And then honestly, I remember even that first record, and this is it, because right after that, you got to think of when I was getting into punk, all of a sudden the same shitty kids I hated who were singing Thriller were suddenly singing Rock the Casbah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you're going to like 6th grade, 7th grade parties, whatever it is. So I'm just like, I felt so betrayed at that point. I'm like, this one thing that I had for me and my small little group of friends, which was like 2 other kids, all of a sudden, like all like, you know, I don't even want to say the cool, whatever they were, all those kids, all of a sudden it was there. So I probably should go back. I'm probably decades long overdue to go back and look at the Clash, but in my silly, and I apologize for this, my 11-year-old misogynist self, even though I was raised by a house full of amazing, strong women, but I was always like, yeah, Clash kind of sounds like punk rock for girls. Like I bet my sisters would like this. Like it's totally different, which is the dumbest thing ever. But that's yeah, I was always Nevermind the Bollocks.
Yeah, I've definitely.
I know that, you know, obviously all the bands that I would go on from Tribe 8 to Frightwig to Torso to etc. would always be like best, my most fucking beloved favorite bands.
Well, Frightwig is a band that I only recently kind of discovered. I flipped by their records so many times, and it was only after kind of through the Lunatics book and the way they talked about how important that band was for them that I went back and checked them out. And my God, that band's so sick and completely forgotten.
So good. Yeah, I know, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Which is crazy. Yeah, they're one of my favorites, man. They have always been one of my favorites.
Yeah,
That's the one
fantastic.
thing about being like, yeah, old as dirt is like having been there and bought those records like when they came out and just being so like, oh yeah, fantastic. And just doing stuff that like no one else was doing. That's the other thing, man. It was like beyond, I think the way the shorthand was like, it was like a female flipper. It was like so much more than that, man. It was just like, yeah, it was great.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I think that's the great thing about, obviously there's lots of drawbacks to the present state of the way people consume media, but the amazing thing about it is the fact that there is so much stuff that you can discover now that like, for whatever reason you might have missed.
Yeah.
It's like they're a band that I've now dived in and like they need a proper reissue kind of thing happening.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think that's true. That's what's wild. It gets also lost about punk because how much of a huge culture it was. There's so many bands. I mean, nothing like now, of course, but even then, they're like, because I was never into the Misfits. They're like almost, yeah. There's so many bands that you miss out on that I actually didn't discover till later. Till I was like in my 20s that were happening then. You know what I mean? I know a lot of people felt the same way about the Dead Kennedys or something. Like, oh, they're just like a big band. It's just like the logo. So it is. There's just so much. Or, I was always into like reference earlier, like Code of Honor, Christ on Parade. Like those are all like my favorite bands. And most of my friends, had no idea who those bands were and no interest in those bands. So.
I find it also, like you're saying earlier with the Clash, there's a resentment once you've discovered something, there's always this kind of resentment for the next wave of on-ramp bands or the other on-ramp bands. It seems like even though it's almost like a necessity, but I was thinking about that in relationship to Nirvana and how I find people that were already involved in things don't necessarily have the same admiration and reverence for Nirvana because they were already involved in it. They didn't need Nirvana. And same with the Clash. I think a lot of people, the Clash was an on-ramp for them. But like if you had already discovered it, you didn't necessarily need that on-ramp.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All of a sudden, like, should I stay or should I go? Which is a fucking brilliant song. Yeah, you already have. I mean, I already have like Damage 1 and 2. Yeah, exactly. You got Code of Honor, bro. What price will you pay? I don't need that shit.
So, where did you kind of go in terms of what was the first concert you went to or first live music experience you had?
First live music experience was Rainbow, Richie Blackmore's Rainbow, and the Scorpions. And I was so bummed because the Scorpions blew Rainbow away, and it was like blew them away. And it was at the same time, I don't know, it was at the same time I was discovering punk and discovering all this stuff, but I didn't know where shows were. I didn't know any of these things. And then there's another great radio show. I don't know if it's come up on here called Adventure Jukebox.
I don't think so.
WXCI. It was a singer. I think he was a singer, someone from No Milk on Tuesday.
Okay.
And great band. And so they just had everything, man. I discovered everything. That's where I discovered Husker Du. Like, it was where my life changed. It's just like everything. And Articles of Faith, like all this stuff every week is like what we all did. You just tape it. And I don't know where, I mean, all those tapes would probably, there'd be nothing left on the film anymore, on the tape of it. But every week I just had so many tapes and tapes of it. And then they talked about the Anthrax. And so I couldn't, I'm like, I don't know, 11, 12 years old, and trying to find people and to drive to this place. And the Anthrax at that time was in an art gallery, the basement of an art gallery in Stamford, Connecticut, in a super sketchy area. And so we went. Finally, I convinced this girl who's a girlfriend of this older dude who's in the, punk, but, back to like my foster brother and his bandmates kind of punk. And over me and my best friend, Scott. And I mean, even to put it into context, dude, it was like we lived in this little rural ass town, like a farm town. I was only, except for like my siblings who were they're so much older than me, they're from another planet. I was like the only brown skinned kid around. And so I grew up getting called nigger every day, getting called spick every day. And actually, and my best friend was this Native American kid named Scott. And so they would call us spick and span, which the worst thing about it is that in hindsight, I'm like, oh, that's kind of clever. It's really shitty, kind of fucking clever. Fuck you. So you go to, when you're in grammar schools, because, this town was so small, it'd be like the kids from high school, etc. And so we were just ripe to find this thing, to find punk rock. And so I brought him to this first show and show up. I had no idea. Still trying to figure out what punk rock was all about. And pull up and I'm like, you coming in, I'm trying to give the guy the money. And he's just like, go in, just go in. I'm like, oh yeah, of course, man. What a poser. I'm such a poser. It's punk rock. We don't pay. And then I go, and then later he grabs me. He's like, yo, the cops were there. Just give me your money now. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm such a poser. But it was, I think it was mental abuse, but I had no idea who the bands were at this time. Right. Yeah. I think it was mental abuse. I figured it out later because there's like skinhead dudes on stage. My first time ever seeing skinhead dudes, the way they're dancing. And the girl who brought us, who's literally a girl, she was 16, and never went to another show because it was so crazy. And then I was just like, I am home. Like, this is terrifying. And and then after that, it was just all the time, is anytime I get a show. And a lot of that, again, like my other sister, my sister whose roommate would tell her what albums to get me. And then it was the same way I had my sister Linnae, who had friends who were like older and queer. And this one woman, Gretchen, who was so badass, and be like, how do I get to a show? And Gretchen she was like 19 or something, would drive me to all these shows. And and save my life. My mom, man, my mom would sit there when first time I saw Black Flag, which was life-changing. I mean, like a lot of things like change your life. That was the moment. And I found video of it actually, is when they play at UConn. And I can see myself there, and you can just barely see. My mom would let me do like a real mohawk. So I had like this half afro, half mohawk thing, like the worst ever. And just to watch myself decades later, like literally seeing this like sea change happening, while my poor mom was reading an Agatha Christie novel in her car outside, while basically a riot was happening.
That's awesome. Who were the local bands around that time too? Because it's like you mentioned, it's the first Anthrax space, right? So there's like Seizure and that
Seizure.
Kind of
yeah, Seizure are my favorite bands ever. I love Seizure.
Awesome. Oh my god,
so good, awesome. Dude. Oh my god, so good. And then with that album, when Carl, the singer, was saying for Corrosion and Conformity, still so good. And normally I'm like, oh, once people get big, normally I'm the first guy. I think maybe just because, Carl was like a hero of mine when I was a kid, but I still love that record, Blind. But No Milk on Tuesday, Vatican Commandos, like kind of all this sort of generation before me. Lost Generation. I don't know if you ever listened to Lost Generation with Joey Diaz from Bridgeport, but they are fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, because there's that Incas Records, right?
Yes, exactly, bro. Yeah. There's nothing you don't know. It's so crazy.
Well, no, it's weird because that was a scene that was like a real kind of like area that I had a blank spot on, and it was only recently that I started looking into Incas Records and started connecting a lot of the dots and sort of looking at the stuff that happens, like you mentioned, like this sort of like the generation before the Connecticut stuff that I was obsessed with. So. Right. It's only now that I'm really digging back and being like, oh, there's so much interesting kind of cool stuff happening the wave before.
There's a band called Chronic Disorder that has totally kind of been lost to time. Mm-hmm. And I think their second record is so good. No one liked them in the scene. I hope I'm not talking out of line, but at least from what I can see of going to shows, they're not a popular band. But I loved that record. And I started, because like all of us, like I started a fanzine. Just to be able to have something to do. And because, one, to be able to verbalize and all these other things, or to find my voice, but also just to be able to talk to bands, just to be able to have a way. Mm-hmm. And I remember talking to that singer, Spit Respectable, for like 4 hours on the phone. And it was like this, like, and then at the same time, the second time I saw Black Flag, being like, hey, Henry, can I interview for my zine? No, go away. I was like, all right, bro, just wait.
That's have you run into him since? You must have seen him since then.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. Me and my brother Jocko, we toured around with him and our friend John during the Lifetime tour. Yeah, and we were teenagers. That was life-changing. That sent us two other ways. Me and Jocko had a band at the time called Rage of Discipline, and
did you guys put out records, Rage of Discipline?
No,
well, of course, a Righteous Jams record.
Righteous Jams, that's where it came from, because I tell these stories to Joey. We're in the van, and basically it's like, me and Jocko before, because Jocko would go on and become a Navy SEAL. And before this, we're just like fucked up kids. We had our first band was called Bronson's Children, because he's obsessed with Charles Bronson. Yeah. And then we're like, that's not, we'll be Rage of Discipline. And then we were so we'd practice for like 5 hours in the shed. And then if one time we only practiced for 2.5 because we were tired. We're like, we're weak bastards. We don't deserve to be called Rage of Discipline. We're now called Struggle. And yeah, we're just out of our minds. Like, I still have journals from then, and it's like, it's ridiculous. And so when Rollins Band was playing, we showed up at all the shows, and we were like these crazy skinhead dudes. Like, we were out of our minds. Like, we were just like, we were just bleeding testosterone on a whole other level, and Andrew, the bass player, the barefooted hippie bass player, like, loved us. And I think with Henry, he didn't know what the fuck to make of us, because we were always just like destroying their shows, getting kicked out. I remember they played with Agent Orange, and I thought Agent Orange is sold out at that time, so I was spitting on them, trying to fight Agent Orange, just like out of our minds. And so we'd always be like, so Henry would work out. He'd be doing push-ups and doing like one of those like push-up bar things. And me and Jocko would be like, 20 feet away, like doing our own push-ups and just sort of circling them. And I later it'd just be like, yo, he's just freaked out by you guys. He's not. I'm like, why doesn't he want to hang? Why doesn't Hank want to hang? And so Andrew was supposed to do a demo that didn't happen. But and actually the last time I ever talked to Henry was it was at the Anthrax. They played the Anthrax. We'd spent like a whole, I don't know, it was like months kind of like following them around. And I mean, I'm sure this has happened to you now, being on the other side, but I didn't know what to say to this dude, right? This dude literally, like, when I first heard Damaged, like, I for the first time felt like there's like 2 records, man. It was like that one. I'm like, oh, all this noise in my head, like, I'm not the only one. Like, this is the soundtrack to what's going on inside me, man. Like, all this fucking horrible, just being twisted in all these directions and pain. And, I didn't know the word depression. I didn't know the word of like all this other stuff. Even though, the song depression. So I guess I should have known more, but I didn't know how to prove it for myself. And this dude literally changed my life. It's like that and Zen Arcade are really the big touchstones for me. So I went up to him after this, and after this sort of like summer of the following him around and doing push-ups in his presence. And I was like, man, just where you guys going to play next? Oh, there. Yeah, that's sick, bro. I had no idea how to talk to someone. And on this, and he was just chill. And he just said, because as you know, you call me Nathan, my middle name is just like, hey, Nathan. He's like, stay out of prison. And I was like, fuck. At that point, I was like, I'm a teenager. I'm like, yeah, that's the sickest thing he ever said. And then, I didn't, by the way, but yeah, it was wild. I don't even know how we got there, but that was our relationship with Hank. And then with Jocko, I mean, like, Jocko obviously becoming like a Navy SEAL going on. And he was just like, yo, I went on real search and destroy missions. And I think that this is a real, thing for our generation, at least for us and my friends. It obviously happened with Slapshot in Boston, is like, we heard these things and we believed it, and we lived it. And we, in some ways, for a lot of negative ways, I mean, not in Jocko's circumstances, definitely in mine, brought it to the negative, brought it to the extreme of what they were singing about. We went out and lived. And I think it comes down to a lot of, at least for myself, and I think a lot of my friends, and there's a lot of kids obviously who come from very stable homes. I didn't really know how to, I had like a bad dude for a dad, right? And I didn't know how to be a man. And I was raised by these brilliant, strong, out of their minds women. But I thought how to be a man was just to destroy things and break things and hurt people, because that's all that I knew. And so I think a lot of my friends kind of had that same way. We're like these little boys who no one taught how to be a man. So as you know, as a father now, and and being further along the journey with me, like, that's a real trip.
Yeah,
that's a real trip to look at my 6-month-old little boy right now and be like, fuck, how do you do this?
Yeah, it really, and you just, obviously, in some cases there are mistakes that are a lot easier not to make, but like, you still just don't want to make the same mistakes that your parents made, and you don't want your kid to be like you in the same way that they just want to be you. I find that.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, that's fucking heavy, bro. That's heavy.
It's,
I got to tell you, the episode that you guys did when we did the interview with your mom, which was one so brave of you and Tristan and so beautiful, like that, I love so much. Like, that was that was phenomenal. So I just having to explain to your mom what a circle jerk is. I mean, that was pretty great too.
That was incredible. That definitely a memory I'm going to cherish forever.
But that was beautiful, man. I mean, that's when we I will tie this back to music because this was what we're supposed to be talking about. But I haven't gotten to speak in many years now.
Yeah.
But I remember my mom passed away, and there was this night called Blackout Bar that Damian from In My Eyes and Explosion and Gibby from Panic and the Trouble and Louderbach. Don't sleep on Louderbach. It's my favorite thing he's done. They had this awesome night called Blackout Bar, and my mom got really sick, and I went away, and I spent the last 3 weeks with her in the hospice, and I came back. And no one knows what to say, right? Especially if you haven't lost someone. And people mean well. And there's this woman, Sharon, who's a bartender, and she came out. And we're from the same scene, so you know each other and you're friendly, but we weren't close. And she gave me this crazy long hug. And then she looked at me and she was like, "Welcome to the shittiest club ever," because she had lost both her parents. And I was like,
I meant the actual Blackout Club.
Yeah, no, not the actual Blackout Bar, which also is an awesomely shitty club. But just that have lost your parents. And you don't know unless you haven't gone through it. Really is like the most exclusive, shittiest fucking club ever. And it doesn't matter your age, bro. I mean, I know people being in film now, you have friends that are from their 70s to 17, strangely enough, or peers. And it never changes, man, is that the feeling of being orphaned. And so that's always what I always say to my friend John just recently lost his mom. And I was just like, we went out to lunch the other day. I'm like, yo, bro, I'm passing it on. I'm like, welcome to the shittiest club. And at this point, he's lost both his parents. So now it's like, as I have, it's like the VIP level that you don't want to be on. But but anyway, I'll just say that was so beautiful. That was so beautiful. And the fact that she got to see you take over the world, man, that she got to see you accomplish is just, it's rad.
No, I that means a lot. And that's definitely, I'm out of anything that's come out of this podcast. That's the one thing I'm glad that came out of it, is that I force myself to do that with my parents and have those kind of conversations with them, and just so I can give it to my kids and just but like you're saying, like once you lose a parent, it really does change the way you look at the world. Like I think that's the other piece of it, that like I looked at Kanye West when he lost his mom, and I can completely empathize with the mental health stuff that came after that for him.
Yeah,
because it fucks you up in like a real way.
It's really true. No, it's true. And there's nothing, and it never heals. That's the thing. I mean, my mom's been gone for, almost 2 decades now. And I never, obviously it never, when people still talk about it, like when someone would be like, my friend the other day several days, or, a few weeks ago was talking about, when your mom died, and it was like, I was hearing it again for the first time. Every time someone says it, it's just like this little jolt still goes through. And but that bond, and I think the bond with, especially hearing your mom and telling the stories that are so awesome, and her support of you and like all of that, and like like I said, my mom bringing me to shows. My mom, I was like, I became vegetarian like really young because we lived on a farm. And once I put it together, my dad would be like, "Oh, you have to eat meat." So I just wouldn't eat anything. And so she'd sneak me off to, the local vegetarian store or whatever, which is like, wasn't like it is now. It's like just bins of grain, it's really nothing, like some nuts, some legumes. But yeah, just that love. And I see it with my little boy when he looks into his mom's eyes, even at 6 months. It's just like, yeah, there's something, us from having kids, there's something that both healing and breaking at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the one thing no one expressed to me, and maybe my mom did and I just ignored it or chose to ignore it, but like, you're never not going to be anxious again.
Shit.
It's just
I'm already so anxious, bro.
I know, me too. I was like,
before the kid came, yeah.
I had an anxiety disorder. I didn't know this was going to be. But anyway, this is, but it's definitely like, but it also gives you purpose, and it changed me and changed the way I look at the world. And, like in the same way you can't understand until it's happened to you, I think in a positive way with kids, like you can't understand until you have them, like what a demand is. Like people will cancel me on the podcast with me like minutes before the show and just be like something with the kids. And I'm like, oh, you don't have to say anything more. Just say something with the kids, because I completely understand.
Yeah, I squeezed in tonight. I had to squeeze in on music time. We have a music time ever since I brought him home from the hospital. And so I squeezed it in real quick before we got on tonight because that's and trying to teach him that, and explaining to him even like what modulating means. We're going, he doesn't understand what I'm saying. He just likes I'm throwing him around. You know what I mean?
Exactly. But it will have an impact. It will one day, when he's making, buckets of money as a music producer, the modulation talk will come back.
Yep, totally. Or when he's in a van and I'm like still can't retire because I'm still supporting him because he's out. Yeah, totally. I'll be like, what did I do?
Either way, it's a joy. I guess before we start talking about Rollins, actually before we move on, I think Henry Rollins I think it's underappreciated what a cultural impact he had on people. Like obviously you're on the early onset of this thing with Lifetime, but like later on throughout the 90s, he was like, I guess like the only thing comparable, and I think he's a much more positive force ultimately. And I don't mean if you're friends with this guy, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but like but almost like a Joe Rogan type in like the way he kind of like became a figure that people like an aspirational figure in a way.
Yep. Right.
Joe Manganiello talked about how important he was to him as a kid. And like, he wasn't even a fan of Black Flag. He was just like a Rollins fan.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah. He like modeled himself after Rollins, and that's why he started working out and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, man. Yeah, bro. That's exactly it. And that's why, I think if it wasn't for Rollins, I think I know speaking specifically just for, because, it's just, we're bonded this way, but me and my brother Jocko, completely different paths. If we hadn't run into Black Flag in general, when I saw Black Flag for that first time, it was me and my friend Scott again. And we followed Kira around, right? We're following her around this whole place, and she's just there walking around. And we're like, oh my God, there she is. And then, we're just these weird kids, this Native American kid, and like this, everything that I am, like I said, with a shitty, weird fucking Afro mohawk. And then she stopped and she was like, hey guys. And we're just like quiet. And she goes, you guys excited for the show? I think Saccharin Trust was playing or something like that. They're about to go on. And we're just quiet. And she tried to say something else, and we just stayed quiet. And then finally she shrugged. She's like, all right, have fun. And she walked away. And me and Scott were like, that was so sick. That was so sick. We talked to Kira. But the show, when that dude comes on watching the video, again, decades later, when that dude comes out, they're jamming, it's just sick. When that dude comes out in his shorts, everything changes, bro. Everything changes. And I know it became an easy target for people later, and the thing that people thought Rollins was. And, I think just naturally there's such a negativity that comes obviously in punk. And I understand that from both ends of it. Being, MDC, Millions of Dead Cops being my favorite band, and then years later beating up that same band because they played a song. But you know what I mean? But it was just like that dude, you're right. You can't overstate the impact that had. And that dude that he willed into the world. You know what I mean? Like he literally willed it into the world. It's phenomenal. Yeah. There's nothing like Black Flag.
Yeah, no, they're definitely, and they're, everyone who comes on the show from that time says it. They were the band, them and DOA, that showed up and everything changed.
100%. And that's a great thing about being, again, starting to go to shows so young. It's like you get to all these bands. I'm like, oh yeah, I saw them. Yeah, I saw them. Yeah, I saw them. I saw them. I saw all these things. I never saw the Ramones because they'd always play they always played over 21 clubs. So I never saw the Ramones. And I didn't get to see the Dead Kennedys, but I saw everything else. I went to go see when I saw the Descendants, and I brought, my mom was cool. My mom could put up with a lot of stuff, but any way of me ever disrespecting women besides saying that Clash was a girls punk band, which I apologize to the world for again, one more time. I was 11 years old and an idiot. But I brought some girl to this show with me, and and then they were playing. It was awesome. It was the Descendant playing was awesome. It was crazy. I completely forgot all about her. And she went to the car, and my mom came in. It's like your biggest nightmare. My mom came in to the Descendants show and got me. And I was dancing. I'd almost got into a fight with a skinhead. Like it was like the greatest day of my life. I was like 14 or 15 years old. And then everything's like needle scratch. And my mom comes in and grabs me violently by my arm and drags me out because I was being disrespectful to a young lady. And she was totally right.
That, you gave the descendants the ultimate segue into parents. If they didn't take that
right,
opportunity,
yeah, totally, it's true. And I don't know if they played that because I got dragged out. Who knows? Exactly. Hopefully they did.
Well, your sacrifice hopefully was their gain, at least in that case. What were some of the other like sort of bands around this time? Because as you know, it is kind of transitioning. Like, who were some of the first of like your generation of kids that were bands that were starting to pop up? Or you notice that there's like a changeover? Because once again, I think it's in the Anthrax book they talk about how there's almost like a changing of a guard at a certain point.
100%, man. And it was really, because it was like, I remember even saying like Uniform Choice, because everything happened. These guys that were sort of like the era before us. I remember when Uniform Choice played. I'm sure it's come up on the show before. Screaming for change. We're all throwing like quarters at them and stuff. But they're all like had long hair. It was like everything was just changing in that way. I could see this, and but then it starts honestly, personally, and from my heart. It comes to Pete Morrissey, who's will always be my brother and one of my best friends till I die, happened since we were 13. And he started Force Reality, and then there are these bands, and there's a band called Power Surge, and there's bands called Skeletal Ambitions that I would play after. And we just started, and it's really a precursor to even that would go on in Boston, is we just kind of took things on this whole other level. I remember going for we lived at the Anthrax, me and Jocko John, all of our friends at that time, Dave, all the kids from Power Surge. We lived there. That was our life. And I would get banned on Sean and Brian would ban me for fighting on like a Saturday and then let me back in on Friday. I remember they had Gavin from Burn talk to me once, like sit me down. And I'm like, this fucking guy? And Gavin's awesome. But I'm like, yeah, they had him sit down and try to talk. But it was just like, yeah, man. No, it was like, it was our time. Yeah. You know what I mean? Seizure was gone. We played shows a while, but like, it was just, it was like, then that really became like our time. But I didn't become, I'm tight with John Joseph. We didn't become friends until years later because Cro-Mags never fucking played. They played, they just never showed up at every show, as opposed to Roger, who I've known forever, because AF would play to like, everyone would think they weren't going to show up. They did show up. They played to like 17 or probably like 35 people or something. And then he's hanging out with, me and Jocko and Pete and whoever. And like, it was just, I know you've talked about it on the podcast before, but to have these people that change your life and then to have that access is just like, especially Roger's one of like the greatest people ever in our culture. That's Absolutely. Just the truth of it.
100%. And
it's been so weird because he seemed so old then. And then we played in Germany. It was Righteous Jams at Agnostic Front, like one of those festival things. And suddenly we'd almost caught up. It was the weirdest thing. So I think when you're like 20 and like 14 or whatever it is, 15 is like a really weird gap. But then I can't remember what he turned. And then I was just like, wait, hold on. How are we peers now? What happened? But yeah, it was, I don't even know if I answered your question, but that's really when it started. Everyone started to kind of do their own bands. And by that time I'd been in like 20 bands. I got my first band was called Dead End with me and Scott again. I'm not sure if he was Span or which one they're referring to of us, the two of us. But we that was when we were like 12 or 13. And so we just played. But I didn't play, Skeletal Ambitions, I think was the first time I got to play the Anthrax.
Chris Menicucci lent me some research materials over the Information Superhighway. Cooch, exactly. And he told me to make sure to ask you about Skeletal Ambitions because he said the band was super sick.
Oh yeah, it was. Like it was. This is the time too, bro. Like with Skeletal Ambitions, we had a chance to play with DRI, and but it was in Lawrence, Kansas. So we drove all the way to Lawrence, Kansas. One of the dudes in our band, I don't want to call anybody out because now I think there was maybe possibly an actual mental health issue, but at the time you're just all kids, right?
Yeah.
And he became convinced that he was Jesus, and he got into it with a dude, a friend of ours, who's like a roadie, and he was our friend, but he just came along with the ride, and then he stabbed him. Like he went to stab him, but then he stabbed him in his hand, which made he think even more that he was Jesus because now he had the fucking stigma on. Like he was
Oh,
literally losing his mind while we were driving to Kansas. We get to Kansas, drove all the way straight there. We played like a house party, as you will. Lawrence, Kansas is one of the greatest places on earth. Like we had such a great time. Did you guys ever, was the outhouse still around? Do you guys play or was it long gone?
we played. I'm trying to remember what the name of the venue we played in Lawrence, Kansas was. It was kind of, and we played there like so many times. I think even I have a poster for it upstairs. But I
You'd
like it.
remember because the outhouse is in the middle of a cornfield. So
No,
you probably remember.
and the outhouse is I think a legendary.
Yeah.
Then yeah, no, I think we played a place that was more in town. Definitely more in town. I remember it's on like a main drag where there's a record store down the street.
Oh, rad. Yeah. Lawrence, all the Lawrence kids are always been awesome, man. But we we went out there and played with DRI. And I think they were having this crazy like chemical issues within the band. And so we played, it was sick. Everybody went off. I got my first dog, Sierra, then because there's this dude who's like the Sports Illustrated thing had come out about pit bulls, right?
Okay.
So me and Jocko and our friend Bruce were like, yo, we need a pit bull. They sound awesome. And they sound so sick because we're, again, idiots. And there's a big black skinhead out there who had a pit bull that he wanted to get rid of. So I paid him $15 and she changed my life. Obviously, once you actually, it's like having a kid. Once you have it, just you realize they're the biggest babies in the world and the greatest dogs. I've been rescuing pit bulls ever since. Mm-hmm. But I only bring this up about Skeletal Missions because we play our biggest show because there's like 300 kids there. 300 kids show up like every time there's a show at the outhouse. I'm running through the cornfield with my new dog. One of the members of our band is having a psychotic break. And then everyone surrounded DRI's van because they're in a tour bus, right? They're in like a tour bussy thing. And everyone's rocking it and everyone's smacked because the guys are rock stars. Like basically that whole thing we're talking about, like turned on it when I think they actually just had real issues going on, right? Yeah. And they couldn't. But then the woman, Jill Heath, who was their manager, had been Rollins' band's manager.
And a Toronto legend.
Seriously?
I have her copy of the Negative Approach test press that Rollins gave her back in the day. But like she booked all the shows that I went to growing up.
Oh, that's crazy. I had no idea. She is the coolest ever. And so she knew me and Joe. I mean, Jocko wasn't with us, but she knew us from the Lifetime thing. So she asked for help when we got everyone to not kill DRI. Dude, Jill Heath is like, oh my God, she's so rad. I didn't realize she was a Toronto legend. It's amazing. I thought it was like Howie Mandel. Like, who else do you guys have in Canada? Aldo Nova.
Maybe you heard of Drake?
Oh, God,
no, it's too funny because I never in my life did I think she would come up in this conversation, but she is someone that I've dreamed about getting on the show because she took photos in the Youth of Today record. Like she managed Rollins' band. She went on tour with Black Flag. And then she booked the AFI Riot show in Toronto and like all these sort of like pivotal moments in my life as growing up. So
that's just crazy about our cultures, these things, these touchstones that we have. And it's really becomes just a couple degrees separated or 1 degree separated. You know what I mean? Like that's like, imagine if this woman had this impact on both of our lives. It's beautiful, man. I love it.
It's amazing. Well, I was thinking, the other day when Travis Barker, announced his engagement to Kourtney Kardashian, sorry, that I was like, well, now I can connect the Kardashians to Gigi Allen in 4 moves.
Oh, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Because go on, sorry.
No, I was gonna say that because the world is too weird, man. I feel like we've been alive too long. I mean, that's what happened over when all of a sudden all of these, I feel like everyone caught up to us in a way, and it's just like even just like in the sort of the mainstream that happening in the summer of 2020 when everyone has these signs that read like ACAB and all this shit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this straight ass normal fucking people. And all these people are suddenly learning about like, trans rights and all these things. I'm like, yo, I got millions of dead cops in like 1982. I know this shit. You're just catching on that this is something you should be concerned about. Yeah. About police brutality. Yeah. Like literally everything is in this record. And now this is why we can't have nice things. Cause then they take it to, it's so weird about all these things. When I saw the Travis thing, knowing Travis, it's just like, I don't know, bro. I don't know why I'm talking right now. I can't top you putting together the Kardashians with Gigi Allen. We should just end here, I think. I don't know why I'm even trying to speak right now.
Well, I like, but I don't know. I guess it's one of those things where it just always feels like you're saying we're always like 10 years, 20 years ahead of the conversation in punk and hardcore, where like, yeah, in the 90s, people were having these sorts of conversations, you know, where people are sitting around talking about this stuff. And like, I'm grateful that I got into this music because I got introduced to like, you know, bell hooks and you know, Howard Zinn from like just from punk reading lists, because that was just something you were supposed to do.
That's right. Well, I mean, that's 100. I mean, I think it's across the thing. Is like even with this, you know, even with feminism, man, which is a weird thing for two dudes to be talking about, as we shouldn't, but it's just like, even when people are just starting to get around, it's like, yo, this is, you don't understand. You're looking at the fifth wave of, you know, of feminism right now. Like, I learned all this stuff from, you know, you should listen to the Poison Girls. You know what I mean? You should listen to like, how do you like, it's all in my record collection right now. These are all things that I was discovering. To be ashamed of calling Clash a girls band. You know, that's really, I mean, as opposed to girls are much more smarter and more emotionally intuitive than us. And that's probably why I'm an idiot. But no, it's like, dude, it's all those things of growing up with, you know, my favorite bands are always Crass, Conflict, you know, Flux, like all that stuff. And that's really where I learned so much of what my viewpoints on the world, you know, that's where I heard it. And a lot of people, even, I mean, everything that I do, people talk about, I think now, because the show that I have, not to jump ahead, people try to pigeon me as like a Latino filmmaker, which is just, you know, one small part of my DNA, or like as an African-American filmmaker or whatever. It's like convenient for them because they have something to sell. I'm always like, yo, fuck that shit. I'm a punk rock filmmaker. Like, I was rejected by every culture. I was too dark for, you know, this culture, for white culture. I was too light for black culture. I don't speak Spanish. I don't, et cetera, et cetera. It's like punk rock is where I went. And when I saw, you know, that first time walking in and seeing weird skinhead dance crazy and mental abuse, I was like, oh, I'm home. And that becomes your church, bro. It's like when people feel, you know, how they feel uplifted, they feel seen, they see all these things, and, you know, from maybe like a church service or from, you know, eating your grandma's food for whatever ethnicity you are. I mean, to us, it was like, that was a matinee, and I was seeing, you know, one time the Cro-Mags finally did show up, you know what I mean? Or seeing Agnostic Front, or seeing all these things. Like, that's it. That's my culture. Fuck everything else. I'm a punk rock filmmaker until I die. Everything else is just, you know, what's convenient for the corporation at that moment.
Well, it's funny because, like, you know, as mainstream as all this stuff has gotten, right? Like on, you know, I'm a big wrestling fan. We watch wrestling now. They've got, like, you know, wrestlers wearing, you know, Discharge influenced jackets on TV. But like, the reality is, it's still like, you know, it's kind of like, it's still like an inside thing where there's like this core of people that are all interconnected by the fact that we were all part of this thing, or found something in it for whatever reason. We were drawn to it, like different reasons, but we all found something where, you know, it's shorthand. Like I say G.G. Allen, like immediately, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like I say Henry Rollins, immediately you know what I'm talking about, because these things are nuanced, but we've all spent so much time in these worlds that, like, you know, like you say, you know, Crass and Conflict. It's like, I know exactly what you mean, because, you know, we're all part of this thing.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a shorthand, and that's what I find. Even the people that I work with, you know, I was lucky to, you know, when I was a kid trying to figure everything out. I know we already covered this, but finally discovering, you know, the great Rock and Roll Swindle. And on VHS, there's this place in Torrington, Connecticut, this small town that had this video store that had all these things, and bringing that home. And now, you know, I knew about the Sex Pistols and stuff. And that literally, I mean, I still don't know what the fuck that movie's about. Like, I don't think you've seen it recently. Like, it's just like,
it's a mess.
When I was a kid, it's a mess. And I'm 12 years old. There's even more like, this is sure. But it did something, and it did change something. And then when I got to make a movie years later, this woman walks in, you know, she was 19 at the time, in like a leopard's coat, smells like puke because she had a crazy night before. And it was Juno Temple, the director, Julian Temple's daughter. And as soon as we laid eyes on each other, she's still like my best friend. Like, and it just, as soon as we started talking, it's like, one, she grew up with this stuff, and she rebelled by being into other stuff because, you know, Joe Strummer is at her house all the time. Joe Strummer is her brother Leo's godfather. Like, none of this stuff means anything to her. It's what she grew up with. But she's so punk in her core. But to your point is, we have this shorthand, and that's why you don't have with somebody else. You know what I mean? It's hard to come with something else. You can have these conversations talking about, you know, Strand of Oaks, which if you haven't listened to Strand of Oaks, it's this dude, Tim, and it's phenomenal. It just released his 8th record, In Heaven. It's phenomenal. I was out with him the other night talking, and we're having these conversations, and it can go through all punk rock, all the way to Cold World. You know what I mean? You get all these things. And it's just a shorthand. And my other friend who's an actor, JR, was there just trying to keep up. But you're just finishing each other's sentences. And it's just like, it's beautiful.
Yeah, no, there's something that's really amazing when you do find someone that is part of it. Like when you're like, oh, you know all these things. We can definitely just live in this world for a second together.
Exactly. And again, to bring it back to you, I think there's probably a question I completely rolled over. But when the film I did, Little Birds, Juno and I got the premiere at Sundance, and her dad came. So Julian Temple is there, and I'm like, this is one of those moments. It's one of the moments, as I'm sure you've had, then just the last, couple of years that it's been, of losing your mom. I'm just like, none of this means anything because my mom's not here, but it's like sort of like that thing, she was like, it's just all that sort of bittersweetness that you have. But to have Julian Temple there, and then I'm trying to explain to this dude, the impact he had on me, and for him to sit there and watch the film and, trying to talk about it with him later. And again, I'm just like, all these years later, I'm still just like a nerd trying to talk to this guy, punishing him, as you would say. And, first, and I'm so nervous. So I'm just like, oh yeah, and the greatest rock and roll swindle totally changed my life. So I call it like the greatest instead of the great. So already this dude's like fucking poser. And, but then I asked him about Crass. I was like trying to connect it. I'm like, it's so interesting. Do you guys have any sort of connection to this thing and that would happen? Like, was there anything? And he's just like, they're a bunch of fucking hippies. I was like, all right, dude, right on. Respect. Yeah, Julian's like the most punk dude in the world. He's awesome.
That's wild. Like it's funny too how, punk is one of those things also that, like, unless you're like a traveler throughout the whole journey, like you're describing, like certain people are, there's I will cling to your one era as being the true embodiment of it so hard. And I'm much more interested in the people that can travel throughout it, because watching it evolve is when it gets really exciting. Like you're saying, like watching it go from the Sex Pistols to Crass to, ultimately like Fugazi and yourself.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like all these different places this thing kind of goes. It's wild to see it blossom.
It is. And you can't get stuck in it, man. You can't get stuck in it. It's me. I think I played this band. Actually, I met my wife. And it was in Boston. It was like basically a riot girl band called Cherry Love Affair, bringing it back to Gigi Allen. And this is the thing, as and this is the time, this is like the Righteous Jams time. This is this whole era where everyone in Boston is in like 5 bands. You know what I mean? And while DFJ was in about 26 bands.
Yeah.
He actually played in every single one of the bands that everyone else was in. But in these women, I mean, they're in early 20s, but I played guitar and in the band, but they were good and talented, but they didn't feel like they had permission to play. It was so fucked up. And like, oh no, we got to practice more. So there's no recordings. Nothing exists. Nothing proves that we existed. Right. And it was really great stuff, way better than anything else that was going on at the time. But it was still this thing where these dudes just could take up all this space. Right. And all my band's playing here, come see my band. And like these women that didn't feel that same, whatever it was. And it's fucking heartbreaking. But then now the bands, I mean, think about the bands like Iron Deficiency, Weak Ties, Torso, Upchuck, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I mean? Like all these bands where it's just like, it's fucking rad, Choked Up. It's like all these things. So I love where everything's gone. Yeah. I love of always being like one of the only people of color in a show is like me and Jamil, my friend Jamil, and maybe a couple other people if we're lucky, your friend Chris. To then now, so I agree. We can't get stuck, man. I love to see how it's grown.
Well, punk is also now finally like what it always said it was, like it is, unity and diversity, and it feels like a lot more, like you're saying, like it's not just like, people singing about it now. Like it's reflective in the audiences that are showing up at shows and the bands that are playing on stages. Like you're saying, people are given space, or not given space, taking space and
taking space. Yeah, exactly. That's a beautiful way to put it. Even more important, just taking space and not asking for permission, which is so the punkest thing ever. In some ways it's punker now than it's ever been. Mm-hmm. And especially now it's just like, I mean, maybe it is the same, because the worst part is I think it happened in the early 90s. It happened with this like metal thing. Is like the people I've always, even the majority of my friends all got into hardcore through metal, but this whole break from hardcore punk to hardcore is just like heartbreaking. You know what I mean? Like I hate metal. I've always hated metal. I fucking hate Metallica. I hate that shit. I like I like the Napalm Death thing on on the Peace Comp or something. You know what I mean? That's as far as metal as I'll go. Um but but this whole other influence that come from it, from this other thing, man, it's just different. So I think in some ways there's more punk, at least there was in the 90s, you know what I mean? At least this certain section in the 90s, and may have just been an East Coast thing. But I remember even playing in Wrecking Crew, and those dudes would be playing like Pantera or something over the fucking thing. And I'd be like listening to like Drop Dead or Infest, like on my headphones, like, what the fuck, you guys?
Well, yeah, it feels like in the 90s, it really did start moving away, like you're saying, from punk, and it became a separate thing, like hardcore. And it was like, obviously there's that sort of like the heavy metal aspirational stuff, but even like, I think even the sound of some of the stuff that was happening on the more DIY side moved so far away from punk, where it was like, well, is this even part of the same thing anymore?
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it, man. It's true. I mean, I remember with Earth Crisis, I was always obviously really tight with those dudes, and Carl's so awesome. He's so awesome. But the last time I saw Carl was on a Righteous Jams tour, and we went away because everything was really, there's lots of people around. So he just wanted to get away, so we went to like a coffee shop, like far, just the two of us, and then he just laid onto me some dark End of Days stuff. That was so terrifying. It fucked me up for weeks. At first I'm like, oh yeah, bro, and somehow he got in my brain. I'm like, oh my god, it's all ending. It's like, but I was like the one dude, because I love those dudes. I was always friends with those guys, where everyone that I knew loved their music, kind of hated their politics. And I'm like, yo, I love their politics, I hate the music. Like, I wish it was just like, throw a fucking blast beat in there, bro, or something. But yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I wanted to ask you though, did you ever see G.G. Allin?
Oh yeah, man. Saw G.G. Allin. I beat up Bob Murder in New Hampshire. We beat up G.G. Allin run. Like, we were Skeletal Ambitions. We played with them, and we knew shit was going to go down. It was like, yeah, I mean, this sucks. There's a time that happens in the late 80s where all of a sudden I have one picture of me with a mohawk that somehow survived. Everything else is just gone, because I also became a skinhead. So that became like, no, it never happened. There's never punk rock. And then now, I mean, that was a whole other thing. I mean, in the 80s, man, you had like, all of a sudden everyone became a skinhead. So the whole skins hate punks. And then that sort of break. And then obviously the Nazi thing that happened, all the people that you've been best friends with for years, like brothers with, all of a sudden this like big split happened. But anyway, yeah, we played with G.G. Allin. It turned into an awesome riot. So yeah, got to play with that dude a couple times. You ever listen to Lisa Suckdog? Lisa Carver from Roller Derby?
Absolutely. I love it. And also the Suckdog, she did a split with Smog. That's the first Smog record. Bill Callahan.
Shit.
Yeah. She's got like she also wrote an incredibly heavy book about being married to Boyd Rice.
Oh god, yeah, man. Holy shit.
That's a heavy read. So yeah, no, she's a legend. Like, talk about someone who, is like involved in so much aspects of it. But yeah, I can remember reading in the Roller Derby book about her date with G.G. Allin.
I remember being a skinhead and going, like, being freaked out because I was such a huge fan, and going being boots and braces. I bring my friends, we're gonna go to the show, and there's like, wait, what is this woman running around naked screaming at the top of her lungs? Why are we here, bro? Where's the oi?
Maskus has got this story about bringing oh man, I'm blanking on his name now, the guy who's in Something About Mary.
Not Matt Dillon.
Oh
yeah. Oh dude, Over the Edge. Whoa,
yeah, exactly.
Ever, dude.
I don't know why I went to Something About Mary when there's so many more obvious movies with him. But Jay Maskus has a story about bringing Matt Dillon to CBGB's and Lisa Carver being covered in shit. And
shit.
Going, I love you, Matt Dillon, and giving him a big hug hello.
That's so brilliant. We went to this show, and she just started, like, it was like a book reading when I think it was like, it wasn't the one that came out that I know you're talking about. But I think it was just maybe a collection of like roller derby articles, or no, zines or something.
Yeah, Feral House did, I think, the roller derby book, I think, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, the roller derby, exactly.
Wow,
and I remember going, and that was the first 20, I mean, it was like 15 minutes was her just like making out with audience members, like just bringing them up. And so for the rest of the things, she just had naked like lipstick smeared like all over her face. Like, now she was rad.
It's such an interesting period too in I guess New York, I guess, but with that weird crossover with between performance art and kind of like punk rock or alternative culture at that time too, where like I remember I worked at a video store and we even had like a performance art tape that had a G.G. Allen segment in it where he's like
what?
eating a fries that someone's shitting on, and it's art.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's crazy. It is. I mean, in New York, I mean, and yeah, I mean, New York was, I mean, what a weird place for all those things to happen. Like it only could have happened in New York. You know what I mean? Of like that mixture of, you know, obviously like hardcore and stuff in the streets and punk, but also like the art scene, like all that stuff. It's just, yeah, it's crazy. Once in a lifetime thing for, you know, for better or worse, but once in a lifetime thing. Those stories from those guys are just like next level.
Yeah. It's amazing too, when you kind of think about how all this stuff kind of seemingly happens in New York, but yet it's not, it's so it doesn't necessarily overlap in the same way of like you look at Detroit, you know, and like Cold as Life has run-ins with Insane Clown Posse, right? But that doesn't seem to happen in New York in the same way because it's such a huge city.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're totally right. You're totally right. And there's just, I mean, I think there's just something about, I guess in every way, every scene, I mean, this is really obvious, but I think every scene just feels, I mean, how Boston always felt really blue collar. You know, and so much in New York really does feel like from the streets. Detroit is its own thing. Out to Chicago is its own thing. Like it's really the flavor of the city. It's like Philadelphia. I know you had Nancy on. She's so rad. We need to have. You should do a he said she said podcast with Nancy and I, about all the things because when I was still on social media, you know, we would talk sometimes and because I knew her now like later. Right.
Yeah.
And they were so awesome. She was so awesome. And I would come and play like the most, he's just a gentleman, such a rad dude. And, but then she told us like these stories of what happened when the meat men got beat up. You know, when we beat up the meat men, when this thing that happened, one of my first shows with Wrecking Crew with Biohazard and this big, and it was like, I think that was our first show back in years. And but it wouldn't be two conflicting stories. It'd just be her telling her story, maybe going like, yeah, that was fucked up. Yeah, you're right. It totally went down that way and it was fucked up. But here's kind of the story behind, you know. But that one, sorry to go off that point. Besides that, Nancy's fucking a rad human being. Is that Philadelphia in that time? You know what I mean? That's a city that people sleep on a lot in those bands. You know what I mean? It's just like, I know, again, well covered, but that's Philly also just feels like, I don't know. Well, punk rock's cool.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. Like, and Nancy brought it up there, like the idea that there's a reason you don't hear about Philly is because like a lot of these bands didn't necessarily have a ton of money to put out records. You know, like the scene you're talking about in Connecticut, that when the changeover happens, it's kind of underdocumented because I can't imagine there was a lot of money to necessarily put out records back then.
Yeah, and the bands that had the money, and this is a thing, I think that's why I loved Violent Children, one of my favorite bands. You know, why I hated Youth of Today. And I say that knowing that if I could sit down, you know, we'd have so much in common at this point. But back, I'm like, look at these kids. They look so like clean and white and fresh and like everything, even though you know, Ray'd been around a long time. It's just like, there's just something about that. Like, these are the kids you hate. You know, like this is what I have to deal with when I go to school every day. And now you're going to be here with like it's like, so, but that stuff, I mean, that's over documented. And that whole scene, you know, and I've always been straight edge. I'm still straight edge to this day, just for very, very, you know, just very, very different, you know, very, very, you know, for different reasons in a different way. But yeah, I know you're right. I mean, there's so many great bands in Connecticut that got slept on 100%. First off, start with Lost Generation, fucking great band.
Yeah, like it's amazing who writes the history in punk rock and like what kind of becomes the official narrative after a certain.
That's right. Yeah, no, it's true. Exactly. 100%.
And I guess Boston too, there's like kind of an underdocumentation of some of these bands that were kind of happening like towards the late 80s, right? Like Wrecking Crew starting, there's like STP, there's that band, was it Blitz or Berserker?
Oh yeah, Big Tom, Berserker. They're fucking great.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it, there's a lot of that stuff that did get lost. And I think it's almost like the lost eras when you talk to people like in that, you know, early 90s or something, because there were these bands of people that it became a really local scene, which is really weird. And we never want to be part of like the local scene, but it became like, there's a band Tree. There's a band, I can't believe I'm talking about those bands right now. Sam Black Church. There's a bands I'd never ever would like, and that they'd be very, very much like a local band. And when we were in Big Block, you and Wrecking Crew were just like, yo, get the fuck out. Let's like get out. Let's get out into the world, and so it was, I think there's a lot of Berserk was another band that were just they're great. They had another band called Thug that just had a demo tape. I don't know if you ever heard Thug.
No,
so
I've never
good.
heard Thug. Oh, that's awesome.
You had these, and it was it was Big Tom, it was an FSU with me, and then our friend like Little Joe. But they, I mean, this because they were influenced by Jesus Lizard. You know what I mean? It was like really cool stuff happening. It was like really, it was this time that kind of got lost where people were doing like really interesting things. It wasn't just before it became just sort of like dumbed down kind of, just something else. But but you're right. A lot of that stuff gets lost. I think probably in all of our record collections, we have stuff that no one else was into. You know what I mean? It just goes through. But Boston's weird, man, because Boston is like, because we came in and we kind of inherited this thing. We inherited the Boston, New York beef, right? And again, I think to us is we were trying to like, oh yeah, all right, cool, like this is, and then but it was kind of a lie. First of all, it was embarrassing that these dudes went to New York and got beaten up because we never fucking did. You know what I mean? But then with these guys, like, oh, you guys are all kind of a fucking lie. All this is a lie. These are song lyrics, man. And where did you hate us? Like, that was so weird to us. We were like, when your dog comes and brings you like a dead thing from outside, and then you like yelling at your dog, like, wait, what are you talking about? All you do is talk about bringing dead things from outside. And that's what it was, is we were like, oh, this is it. Oh, fuck yeah. We'll get back on the map. Just fucking watch us. And then, it was weird for that sort of turn. And they're like, oh shit, actually, I have way more in common with these people from New York, socioeconomically, et cetera, from the color of your skin than maybe you from these sort of people that you'd held up on a pedestal earlier.
Mm-hmm. And it feels like it also, well, I guess first of all, like, I've always heard so many different versions of that infamous New York, Boston incident. And I guess DC was involved too, like the original one that starts the whole thing. And people have come on the show, and there's been so many different accounts now. And it feels like it's just something that's become like it's such a like a pivotal moment in hardcore, and it's been canonized in songs now and talked about in documentaries. Yeah. But like you're saying, it's almost like just more myth than reality at this point, because like I've heard so many different takes on what happened that night.
Right. Yeah, man. 100%. I agree. That is all true. And who knows what actually happened, and who knows, as we know from stuff, it's also probably wasn't anywhere near as big as either side says. You know what I mean? It was probably like not at all like it's been canonized as, but they, we got a lot of flack, I think, with me, my friend Bruce, another New England dude, and we moved to Boston, and we met kids from Brockton, we met kids from Southie, and they'd already started FSU, and it was just on another thing. We were just like, so I think we got a lot of shit I think from, at least from Choke in particular, thinking like we worship New York. We're trying to bring New York to Boston, that we ruined the Boston scene. It was literally like, what are you talking about, man? Like, we're keeping this beef alive with people that actually are way fucking more awesome. There's people that are still in my life. Manny Madball was at my house yesterday to meet my son. You know what I mean? Like, there's people that are still in my fucking life. And then they, I don't know, man. It's just like, not even to go down that path. There's just so much of shit is this is why I don't like metal. Let me bring this back on track. I don't like metal because it's fantasy. Right. I don't like metal. I don't like Slayer. I don't like all these things. Like, I'd rather listen to like a country song or a singer songwriter, because you're telling the story, and punk rock is just people telling stories. And as opposed to telling these like fantasy stories. And I think sometimes with this, and sometimes with these bands have these personas and everything else, is a lot of that is just more fantasy. Right. And then sometimes as kids, we're like, oh, this must be real. Oh, fucking battle in the streets. Yeah. Fuck yeah. Let's battle in the streets. I'm like, oh no, this is just a fantasy to you. But because stuff where we're coming from, I think for a lot of us, have really kind of more desperate places, more households that were not safe. Like we had more need to, I mean, people talk about gangs, whatever else. And it was just like when you don't feel safe in your own house, you don't feel safe in the world that you're in. And then you feel safe for the first time with your brothers or with your friends. That's an intoxicating feeling. The first time I ever had another male tell me that he loved me, my whole entire life, was actually at the Meat Men riot when my friend Bobby Urban, who's now passed away, was going to prison, and he had to go because he had to go the next day to turn himself in. And Bobby from Southie, and he kissed me on my cheek, and he's like, "I love you, brother," and it fucked me up. Like, what is that? It like to this day, we're talking decades later, that I just remember this dude. I never had a father tell me that. I never had that. You know what I mean? It's just like that thing that fills this hole in you. And it also becomes intoxicating when you don't feel seen your whole life, right? You feel disregarded. You feel like you've been told you're a piece of shit your whole life. So then you become like the fulfillment of that promise, because that's all that's been told that you are. And for when all of a sudden you do, it becomes intoxicating when you have these 3 letters on you, right? And you have your brothers, and you walk into a room and everyone goes cold. Everyone's skin turns cold, and it's not right. But that's becomes intoxicating, right? Yeah. That becomes intoxicating, becomes like its own drug in a way. And so anyway, so we were living that shit for real. And then because we learned about it on the records, and it really comes down to, I don't know if you remember, I don't know if you had it in Canada, where there's a PSA, a commercial, and they have like a kid gets caught with some pot, and like, where did you learn this? He's like, I learned it from you, Dad. Yeah. We learned it from your fucking fantasy, and then that's why you got knocked the fuck out.
Well, you bring up a point there where Nicole Panter, when she was on the show, she managed like the germs and stuff, and actually a brilliant script writer too in her own right, script doctor and stuff.
Shit.
She brought up this point that when you think about punk rock, it's really people with trauma inflicting trauma because they don't necessarily have the tools to process it, and obviously it's a lot more than that, but there is that aspect to it.
It's true. I think I go back to sort of this first wave that I came on as a little kid. And I think all the kind of kids of my generation at that time, at least, we were all kids who'd been institutionalized. We'd all kids, a lot of us had been in juvenile hall. We were kids. We were fucked up. We were literally thrown away kids. We were like the rejected, if you want to bring it back to suburbia. Like all that was very, very real. I think, and then they're also really smart college educator kids in college doing fanzines. There's like this weird mix of these things, right?
I mean, sorry. No,
no.
I think you brought, and you're touching on it earlier, but I think it's one of the great contradictions of punk rock, or one of the great dichotomies that exists within punk rock. The fact that it's art school meets street rock and roll, and it's like this art school fantasy, and like you're saying, like affluence and a lot of that. And then the reality is there's also like it's street rock and roll too. It's from the Bowery, it's from Detroit, it's from like the streets, and it's this whole thing where it's mixed together. And like you're saying, like there's people that are at times talking fantasies, and then there are people that are living realities.
That's 100% correct, dude. It's so true, and it's weird. And I think it's probably always been a fucked up, delicate balance. You hear all the errors in the 80s, right? When the first thing happened, obviously what happened out in LA, what happened in these different places, when the violence came in, or when the beach kids came in. I remember I understood, Nazi punks, I thought was about racist, like everybody did, right?
Yeah.
And then hanging out, when we came out to the West Coast, and we're hanging out with these dudes, or like this first, because they're generation before us, we were hanging out with the beach kids. I'm like, these dudes are awesome. These dudes are out of their minds. I'm like, wait, they were talking about you. You guys are, I have way more in common with you than I probably do with Jello Biafra. I have all of his, obviously, records, and, had a huge influence on my life. But I remember when Jocko and I met Jello, and he was just like the most squirreliest dude. Obviously, we were young, weird skinheads, so I'm sure he was terrified, but they were hanging out with these beach dudes that had, came in and brought all this violence, and only, from the TSWL guys on, and like their cohorts. And sometimes it comes down to socioeconomics, man. I will say that. I think in the world that just actually makes a big influence out there aren't also fucked up, middle class kids as we found in punk rock again, I think in the 80s. But I think it's exactly what people have a lot of trauma. And the whole point is when you're in a band is to just like with metal art you do is to put your trauma into that. You can either like destroy, and I spent decades of my life fucking destroying. And it's like, oh shit, if I could go back in time and just use this, because I have the same fire. I still want to set the world on fire all the time. I still want to fuck shit up all the time. But now it becomes like, oh, because it's into this. Now I have this way to fucking put it all into and to put this fire into to try to set the world on fire in a completely different way. But those were tools I didn't get until I was like a 30-something-year-old man.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and they're not, like you're saying, even like hearing, saying I love you to another male as being someone who's raised male, it's stuff like these things aren't necessarily taught to us in the way they should be. And especially if you're coming from a situation where you don't have modeling to look up to, it's going to fuck up the way you look at the world. It has to. It's
100%. Let's talk about Righteous Jams, bro. Because I think this is a perfect segue to Joey C. Because exactly what you're saying right now is so Blackout Bar, like we talked about, and we ran Blackout Bar. I worked the door. All of us were there, and particularly about who could come in. And the girls in my band, or they were girls, but like the women in my band in Cherry Love Affair, are always like, "Oh, bring these guys in. They're all probably friends. all people that you have their records, right?" And just to me at this point, it's like everyone's just like a shiny white kid in Boston. You know what I mean? Like everyone's like, I don't right. They're all like nice college kids. And like it. I mean, I love these people, now, but that time I'm like, I didn't really know any of them. I knew Cooch, of course, because Cooch is awesome.
Yeah.
There's no one, there's only one Cooch in the whole entire universe. And
there's
all over the world. Cooch. And I've never met one. There's only one Cooch.
Absolutely.
Love that dude. Excuse me. But, and then one day they bring this kid with them. It looks like he's like 14. And they're like, hey, can so-and-so and so-and-so, and can Joey come in? I'm like, yeah, whatever, cool. And, we go, the nights were always wild. They're always like crazy violence, terrible things happening, just complete debauchery is like our version of Studio 54 or something. Like the stories from there were just insane. And then at the end of the night, it's like 2:30 in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm talking to people, everyone's left. And there's this dude that's just sort of like hanging. And I'm like, the kid all that in earlier. And I'm like, oh, this is awkward. I'm like, all right. I'm like, yo, what's up, man? And he's so polite. And he's like, hey, I just really want to thank you. Look at me in the eyes, shake my hand. I really want to thank you for, letting me in. Like, I had a really good time. Thank you. And I was like, whoa. Like, this kid fucking rules. Every time all these people from these kids come in, they traipse in, they probably have their own insecurity or whatever. They don't want to get punched in the face, whatever it is. Like, they just go in and out. They never say that. And this kid stopped and did that. And I was like, yo, bro, anytime you want. So then from then on out, Joey Contrada from no one at that time, they had Righteous Jams, would come in, like everything would stop when that dude would come to the door and we'd let that dude in. Right. Yeah. And we'd start hanging out with him. And then he's sitting there and he's like basically at a table full of, gang members. I remember one time it was only talking about a girl and how we should go with the girl. And I'm sure he's, like the worst advice from all of his like dorky friends. And I was like, yo, bro, you just got to break yourself open, man. Like, pain is beautiful. Like, let her just fucking crush you, bro. Lay it out. Be alive. Yeah. And I don't know. I think I don't know if that ended well with the girl, but I do know it was her loss because, as you know, about a year late, not even like 6 months later, Joey C was like the Magic Mike of the hardcore world. That dude made actually Channing Tatum look like Chris Farley.
Yeah, no, he had abs for days.
But that's why Joey C is one of the most important people in my life to this day. Is there became this so different, completely different lives, completely different worlds, completely different socioeconomic whatever. And there's just something about that dude that was real. To then he made maybe possibly the worst decision in his life to ask me to join the band, and I was like, yeah, all right, but yeah, but I mean that's what that. So I think there's something to what you're saying, but like how to be a man. Right. And sort of that juggling and stuff. And it really became some of my greatest memories of doing this have been, all the years again, since I was 11 years old. I mean, my first band at 12 was being in a van with DFJ and Joey and just like, Paul Cape Cod. I don't know if you remember Paul.
I remember Paul. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And then, me and Paul and Eric Scandalous, our roadie. and being on the road and hearing these two kids talk and being like, oh my God, you guys are so much more fucked up than we are. Holy shit, you guys are out of your minds. I'm like, I feel so fucked up now. But Righteous James became something when something pretty special. Something special.
Yeah, no, that's why people still talk about Righteous Jams, because it was like a band that I kind of like look at that band and be like, oh, what could have been, because
yeah,
you guys had a lot of label issues, not obviously locking out, but right, like you couldn't get the record out. I remember there being
there's like label issues because when they had the demo, it was always stuff, but it was also, I mean, this is the truth of it, man, is we were like the best band and the worst band ever. Because there's video of me. I'd have to tune Paul's guitar a lot.
Yeah.
I remember Colin of Arabia being so mad once. He was like, you guys are such a great band and you suck so hard. Why do you suck so hard? We went to go play Europe. Because I come from also the era of like, I haven't seen Black Flag. I got my first flight the second time I saw Black Flag. And I remember being on the stage with this dude and we had each other like in headlocks, like punching each other. And Greg Ginn was above me playing his like that clear Dan Armstrong guitar, and he was drooling and he had like spit just like dangling. I was so being punched, I'm more afraid of getting like Greg Ginn spit in my eye. Yeah. But you hear the things. It was awful, but it was just real, and that's what Righteous Jams was. So then we went to Europe, and everyone just like, oh my God, they missed like so many chords. It became something we were like, what are you talking about? Yeah, maybe sometimes we sound awful, but it's just that fucking energy, man. There's just something about this triangle, especially when I would look at DFJ and he would just like count us in, like magic would happen. Sometimes that magic sounded awful, but when it was on, bro, it was special. And Joey C, one of the greatest frontmen of the last couple of decades. I guess it's been a while now. But to your point, the second time we went to Europe with Iron Age, and Joey and I had moved on, man. Like when we stayed with you in Toronto, I can remember, like I stayed in the van, like I slept in the van after rocking out to Since You've Been Gone, as we talked about, after rocking out to Kelly Clarkson, and hanging with your awesome dog. Because I was trying to write, I was trying to figure shit out. You know what I mean? I was like, I want to make fucking movies. And off Joey stayed with me, or Paul, I don't know who went in there with me, but Joey kind of did the same. Joey's just like, so we were in Europe. I'm like, yo, bro, I'm like, I want to make fucking movies. And Joey's like, yo, I want to be a model. I'm like, that's awesome. Let's do that. Let's do, like, we've lived this adventure. And that's what it is. And we left tour halfway through. And then I stepped on stage once for actually Leo Temple, Julian Temple and Juno Temple's brother and Julian Temple's son, for his birthday. We played the Spaceland for shows we wrote for 24 hours before. But besides that, in the real sense, that was the last time I've ever been on stage playing with a band, is with Joey. And we'll never do it again.
Really?
Like, people come up and they've asked us. I do. I miss it. Can you hear me? I dropped my thing.
Yeah, no, I can hear you.
Yeah, I miss it in weird ways. I miss it when I'm driving and then you stop at a rest area and even when you're on tour and you stop at a rest area and there's like all the food you can eat and it's just like that magic of like funny. Like, I miss it in weird ways. I miss music 100%. Everything I know about filmmaking is just through music. We had a scene in my film Little Birds, and these girls, or we like these jump cuts and these girls just running through this going wild and like running around in sunset. And the first time they cut it together, it sounded awesome and like looked awesome. It was like amazing. Like, that's it. It just struck this chord inside me. And then when we did the final cut, I'm like, why do I hate this scene now? Like, what did you change? Like, I hate it. It doesn't work anymore. And she's like, and the editor, Suzanne's like, well, I don't know. And and she's awesome. She's like, I don't know. The only thing I changed was, I smoothed over all the cuts sound wise. I'm like, oh, that's it. I'm like, I hate it now. It's too smooth. Mm-hmm. Like, it has to be like Husker Du playing a fucking love song. Where's the distortion? Where's this? You know what I mean? Like, I know that's fucked up, but that's what's right. So I that's what I take to everything we do, in the film world. But I miss playing music a lot, but I think Joey and I always respect Joey. People ask me, it'll come up a lot of us to play something, and I always extend the offer to Joe. And he's always just like, yo, man, why would we ever look back?
Yeah, no, I definitely, I totally respect that. And understand why. And I think what you're saying, like, that's the punk thing. Like, that was the thing about Righteous Jams. Like, yeah, it would be sloppy sometimes, but that's punk, you know, like that's what makes it real. And like, and then when it would click, like that time with the Dropkick Murphys in Toronto, where it just felt like it was just like you're saying, like when it goes, it goes. And that wasn't even your guys' crowd, but like, just like,
no, sure was not.
everything was clicking that night. It was such an awesome set, you know, and like, but I want to go back to the Blackout Bar for a second. Someone's got to do a documentary about that.
Bro, times were wild, man. And it was yeah, it was yeah, it was a wild, it was like the Wild West, man. Like it really was. But there's all these bands that come out of, like I said, I mean, they talk about, that's one thing about Boston that's so great. When I was talking the other night about I feel like we've been on for a while, so I'm starting to say a boat. I feel like I've got your Canadian accent.
You're gonna start saying sorry every second word now.
Sorry. Everybody that just walked through, I think it's like this in a lot of towns, but like everyone that just walked through these things and where you lived, and like it's like, think of even like band like The Explosion. It was just like all like $1 Million Matt roadied for, you know, our band Big Block. I was in a band with, you know, Dave Walsh. It was like Sammy obviously was in the Trouble with Give. It's just like we all lived in Mission Hill. It's just all this crazy stuff happening. And then Damian, then In My Eyes, and like all the 10-yard fight, you know, we took them on their first tour with Big Block. And, you know, because we've known Fat Boy, we've known LaCroix forever, known John forever. And then that's a kid who got into it young, was doing a fanzine young. Like, that's just like, I don't know. It's, and then you come down to Blackout Bar, where I think a lot of people had also broken their edge around this time. Yeah. So she got really, really dicey. But then also people doing really cool bands. I mean, it was a band like the Damn Personals. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff that was coming out of it at the same time. There's like a lot of art. And I mean, I've always felt bad for Dean. I mean, you know, Dean Bartolonis. Yeah, I was in all these bands with him, from Wrecking Crew on, The Big Block, to The World Is My Fuse, to, you know, he's produced lots of bands from Madball on and all that.
Produced No Warning, Ill Blood.
Yep. Yeah. Dean's awesome. We've known each other. Our first band was when we were teenagers, called The Law. And we have these bands, and then my sort of other life would come destroy these bands. Like, people hated Big Block. I mean, it happened with Wrecking Crew, right? With Wrecking Crew, you know, there's just all these shit would happen, obviously, with my friends. I'd always choose my friends over it. And then same with Big Block. They started Big Block because they didn't know how to break up Wrecking Crew. So what they did is they just started a new band with everybody but me and Keith Bennett, the bass player. And for Sly, I hold no ill grudge. But then stupidly, when they lost their singer, they let me back in the band. And
they always come crawling back.
They always come crawling back. And then Big Block got ruined by my friends. So obviously I'm not being sarcastic. I do love, you know, to this day, or my brothers till I die. Because people didn't know what to make of Big Block, right? People didn't know what to make of 44 Big Block, and not to, because I don't look back. So it's not like, oh, what could have been? But we were at a weird time where everyone thought we were a victory band, right? And I hated victory bands. Not that I hated that sounds, but it just, that wasn't our thing, right? You know, so we have this fight at this one show, and our drummer quit because we got blood all over his drum cases, right? So that dude from Wrecking Crew is like, this is not what I signed up for. Yeah. So that dude quit. We got Al from Shelter, greatest dude ever, and so one of the most favorite people in the world, you know, from obviously American Nightmare, a Piebald, Get High, and we kept going on, but it was always, everywhere we played, it was always like the same stuff. Like, always this violence would happen. I always felt so bad for Dean. And then the same thing would happen with like our next band, and so on. And then he had this amazing band with Mark Ryan from Super Touch, Foreign Islands. And they played out in LA as this thing for major labels, right? Sort of like a showcase. And I was living out in LA now, and I had like some fellows from LA and some guys from Boston moved out with me. I'm like, yo, we're going to go support my friend's band, going to support Dean's band. No one do anything. All right. Like, I fucked up Dean's life since we were teenagers. Please, everyone be cool. Right. Yeah. And so we go and they play, and they're awesome. And they're so dangerous. Like, I love that band with Mark singing. They're great, man. You never knew, like, seeing them in Williamsburg, you never knew what they're going to do. It was awesome. They play, they kill it. And even though there's like this weird Silver Lake hipsters like disco dancing, like being all these weird moves, like I'm like, everyone be cool, don't do anything. And then we leave. I'm like, yo, let's get out of here. Like Dean's talking to the label people and talking to everyone. I'm like, yo, guys, we're gonna go to this cafe, Fred 62. Dean, just meet us later, man. I'm like, oh, I go to Fred 62. I'm so relieved that nothing happened. And then I get a call on my cell from Dean. I'm like, oh, maybe he's lost. And he's like, yo, I just knocked some motherfucker out. I'm fighting. I'm just like, oh no, yeah, I forgot. You're crazy too. Yeah, I forgot. I remember playing that show with the Law in New Haven in a basement, and as soon as I punch someone, you're hitting them with their guitar. That's right. It's your fault as well. I don't even know where. I derailed this so badly, but
well, it's funny because we get to the Silver Lake hipster thing that you're talking about there, and it's funny because I think like a lot of the hipster stuff that starts at the Blackout Bar,
100%, dude. Yeah. Well, sorry to interrupt you.
No,
that's all. That is all Gibby. That is 100%. Yep. Gibby is the start, and I try to explain this to people all the time, especially when they meet Gibby, because Gibby's still one of my best friends. He was in my wedding, like he's like, brother forever. Actually, I went to New York and I hit him up and I was like, yo, bro, where are you? Like, we're here. And he's like, I moved to LA. Like I had to change. And I was like, all right, man, I'll be out there soon. And then I was out there, probably like 6 to 9 months later out here with him. And, but it all starts there, dude. Makeout Club.
Yep.
Like it all starts with Gibby Miller. It's really incredible. Everything that people think of this as this culture all starts with this one dude who, when I first met him, was this like awkward, 14-year-old, 15-year-old, I really was like skinhead, like him and Sammy, like in Harvard Square. Yeah, you're so right, dude. It all like Blackout Bar and seeing the bands that would play there that then would go on to have these nights. I mean, we had a night that was like a drag night, but then you also had members of a motorcycle club that we were affiliated with there as well, like all mingling at once. It probably felt a little bit what New York at a certain time it felt like, and this is what we had in the early aughts in Boston.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I think like that Meet Me in the Bathroom book, like obviously those bands were key bands, but I think like in terms of the culture, like you're saying with Gibby, like there's no way the people that doing Facebook and all this stuff weren't aware of Makeout Club, because that was where this thing starts, like this whole idea of like assessing people and dating, like they're all just dating things ultimately, and it's Makeout Club.
He was offered, I mean, not to tell my boy's story, but he was offered so much money from Makeout Club. And he didn't, throughout all this time, obviously before Friendster, before all these things, and during it as well. And he never did it. Like, talk about punk rock. And he has no, that's this weird thing is I would have, I mean, I regret what I did about, I regret what just happened 7 minutes ago. But he doesn't, man. I mean, that's the thing with that dude and what he's into. Yeah, no, it's special. And you're right. There should be a book. There should be something. There should be a doc. There should be something about all that time. And then too, when, Anthony from the Damn Personals is like winning an Oscar, you know what I mean? And trying to explain like that of like, whatever, a decade and a half ago, we were all in the Blackout Bar. It's just like, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I guess going back to kind of touch on what you broached, I mean, like about with Big Block, when people wanted a fight you band, like people wanted to hear you get up on stage and talk about fighting, but when you're living it, I can't imagine you'd want to do that. Like it's something where it's like you want to escape from that. Like that's the point of this thing. And not that that's always the case. Like there's definitely hard bands that sing about being hard, but a lot of times people that are living it aren't going to be just, writing ballads about it.
No, the music was trying to work that shit out. You know what I mean? The music was literally trying to like, oh, there are things that are broken inside of me. That all comes down to sadness. Like everything comes down to sadness, right? I mean, I think about even my friends and even I think they're friends that people would think could be a sociopath, may have done sociopathic things. And I know that they're probably the most sensitive people that I know. I mean, I was that way. If you didn't look me in the eyes when you shook my hand, that hurt my feelings. I didn't feel seen. So I wanted to punch you in the face because that's all. I didn't know how to react to things. I wasn't, but it all comes down from being so deeply hurt and deeply fucking traumatized. It all comes down to a trauma. And a lot of it is generational trauma. Like so many of us, you and I and so forth, carry trauma from people we never met, from their choices, from our great grandparents and so on, of choices that they made that we don't even know. And we think that we have free will when we really don't. And these cycles that are so nearly impossible to break. I see it with my boy, again, as being 6 months old. And I never met my biological father till a few years ago. And I went out to see him. He actually strangely lives in Van Nuys. And I went to go see this dude. And, he's 60 years old. And right when I'm like, oh man, I recognize that look in his eyes. This dude's out of his fucking mind. And, he's all worked up, and he and his girlfriend, who's dating this 23-year-old white girl, and they had got into a fight. And so he's meeting, his son for the first time, and he can't sit still because he's wondering where she's at, what she's getting into. So then he just would get in this adventure in his car, driving all crazy through Van Nuys. I'm just like, oh, this is like Ghost of Christmas Future right here. And there's just a thing in his eyes. My wife sees it. And then with our 6-month-old boy, it's like that dude, and I know he's just 6 months, but still, it's just like you see this fire in his eyes. My wife is just like, oh no. But like, what generational thing have we passed on, or what my fear of that thing will I pass on? Right. It's so wild. And obviously being aware of it and learning how to show intimacy, going back to Bobby Urban telling me he loved me, in 1996 or whenever it was, or the first time I ever heard it, through a friend, or like that, of like, how does that look? How does like male intimacy looks? And you look back at punk rock, and you look back at hardcore, and you look back at the people who are my brothers and my friends forever. And then that's all inside there. Mm-hmm. It's all inside. There was these relationships that we've cultivated, like, forever. And obviously it goes across gender lines, and all these people in my life, my wife, meeting my wife, playing in a punk rock band together. You know what I mean? Like, that is always this culture is just has its fingerprints over every single thing that I do, and always will. But to your point of that time with Big Block in particular, like, that was literally me trying to work out shit. Something's wrong inside me. Something's damaged. Something's broken. Let me scream about it, and slam a microphone in my face. And then that would get, my beautiful friends worked up sometimes, and then shit would just like pop off. And it may have gotten derailed from time to time. And that's why with Righteous Jams, that's what I think was so beautiful to come back to, is like, there was a couple incidents at festivals, right? But they weren't particular Righteous Jam shows. But that didn't happen at Righteous Jam show. Like, there was this chemistry even just between Joey and I, and with the people, whenever maybe other things were popping off, that we could get past that. And it could be this like fun brother and sisterhood. Like, I don't know, you saw a glimpse of it that you hadn't seen really in the 80s. And sometimes if maybe the kids looked a little like whiter and shinier than I remembered, and maybe a little less damaged, but a lot of that stuff's inside, right? We can't judge people from the outside. Something brings us all to the show. Something brings us all to this. Something brings us to all these things that could, to Drake, could be listening to Drake. But you're not, you know what I mean? You're somehow here, and somehow this is repairing, or at least exposing something that's fucked up and beautifully fucked up inside you.
Well, I guess in some ways, like, people talk about people self-medicating with alcohol or self-medicating with drugs, but like, I guess violence can be a form of self-medication too, in a lot of ways, and not to excuse it or to justify it, but at the same time, it is something that, if especially if you were raised with it, or something that was always a threat, it's going to be something that becomes something that's weirdly soothing, I guess, at a certain level.
100%. And that, again, and it is definitely not excusing of it at all. But it is true that it becomes like the language. It becomes a language you become very, very comfortable in. I mean, when I went to, I made my film like 17 days because I knew I was going to go to prison. Then it premiered at Sundance, and then, I go to prison, a couple months later. Yeah. And everyone's like, oh, I'm like, prison is like, I understand that. Like, I'm used to that. I felt like a drunk in like a liquor store, all of a sudden I felt like a drunk in a bar. Like, I know this, I'm super comfortable with this. Yes, prison sucks. It's probably the darkest places on earth, whether you're a prisoner, whether you're a warden, a guard, whatever, just is like the worst of humanity, because, if there is a God, obviously we are his worst creation, and prison brings that out in everybody, including myself. But that I'm more scared walking into a meeting. I'm more scared trying to, talk about art. That's terrifying to me. The other thing, like, unfortunately, like, well-versed in and comfortable with it. It's like trying to create something that becomes like terrifying to me.
Yeah. I've kept you forever, man, and I could talk to you forever. And anytime you want to come back on this thing, the door is always going to be open for this
Bro,
because
one, I'm this no, this has been so awesome. It's been so long overdue. And I actually, because I'm off, I got off social media, but then I wanted to for one for the song, but then also to finally get to do this. So I actually had to make a fake account because I really straight edge today. Talk about being addicted to violence, right? And I 100% was. That was probably the hardest thing ever to this day still, it's still something that's still my default. And luckily, I've been sober from violence for a while now. But it's just social media, bro. Like that's it. Like that's a real addiction to that dopamine rush, right? So looking at your phone, checking Instagram, it should be like, don't drink, don't smoke, don't fucking scroll.
No, definitely.
And because also now they've monetized our individualism. To go back to punk, man, it's like this. We had to create our voice, right? We had to start a band, do a fanzine. We had to do these things, and then now it's basically carefully crafting an Instagram persona. Making fucking immoral people millions of dollars, right?
Well,
No, what are you gonna say?
Oh, no, I was going
Sorry, Damian.
Oh, I don't know what you're talking about. But I guess going back to what you're saying earlier, it's like they've found a way to monetize our pain and our longing and our sadness, right? Like that's why we want that dopamine rush. That's why it feels like we can all self-medicate with our phones.
It's true, dude. Yeah, think about it. These thieves, because they're fucking thieves, these corporate thieves had the think tanks in a room of how to trick our brain chemistry, how to access our brain chemistry to stay on a page or an app for as long as possible. Right. And what are they stealing from us? The most important thing we have, which is fucking time. Like that's all we fucking have. And it's still, how often we just fall into this numb black hole. And so literally, that's real straight edge, is just getting off fucking social media. And obviously, the internet, the internet's its own thing, right? Like I wish that I'm so stoked when someone puts like a live video of a show I was at 30 years ago. Actually, I'm exaggerating. I'm not that stoked. But I'm like, oh, cool. This is a video I guess I'll watch. Someone sends to me for about 30 seconds. But if there's like some weird like Soviet era film I can't find anywhere else, I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
But is it worth fucking ISIS or QAnon?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah. No, I think that's the like, it's so funny because like I think in the beginning on the internet, it was mainly the punks. I look back on a lot of this stuff and it was like people that already kind of knew about, maybe not everyone. And obviously I'm generalizing here, but like, people that knew what was up. And as it's gone on, you've just seen more and more normal people get on there that can't figure out what's going on. And like you're saying, you see the rise of QAnon and ISIS and all these different things that are stepping in to fill these trauma voids in people. And to be like, we're here, like here, we can use you now. Like they found a way to not just monetize, but weaponize.
Yeah, bro. You're so right. You're so fucking right. It's terrifying, but if we're in a world where you can't, because there's obviously the beautiful part, as we know, as we both probably spend a lot of time on Discogs, you know what I mean? And I spend, because I can't fit any more t-shirts into my drawers anymore. I have like thousands. Because that's the other thing is like, if I'm going to buy, I still wear the same shit I always wore. I still dress the same way I do. Still wear the same band shirts, but now it's cool. I'm gonna buy off this kid from Etsy. Like that's awesome. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna have something like that. I can put this money in this person's pocket. The same way of like, I'm not, I don't listen to Spotify. Like, buy stuff on Bandcamp. If you're not on Bandcamp, then I don't know what to do. You know what I mean? It's just like all those things are so awesome to discover stuff. But you're right, at a really fucking high price. at a really fucking high price. And you don't want to be. And I think it comes down to, and if you have something physical, if you have an art, if you have something that you have to advertise through social media, you have to interact with people, like that's great. And it's almost like responsibly doing heroin, right? Because I would say responsibly drinking, but it's heroin, like fucking social media. That trying to fill that black void is like heroin. So if you can successfully do heroin because you have to, God bless you and Godspeed, and that's awesome. But it's like trying to let these people as less in the door as as possible.
Yeah, now with kids, it's even more. It's nuts having kids and just being like, we've put the cigarettes in their hands. We've all this stuff has just been because it's so much more consumable than cigarettes are. Cigarettes are harsh the first time you smoke them. It's not harsh to look at a screen the first time.
That's so true, dude. No, it's true. And it's like, I mean, having it, and then also what do you do? Because you can't, this is what the world is right now. Mm-hmm. So you can't completely deprive your children of this, right? Mm-hmm. And what does that look like? So yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. I think by the time, luckily, you know, Billy Jack's only 6 months. So I think the world will already be over by the time. Like we'll be back to, it'll be like Mad Max times by the time he's like 5. So there'll be no internet. Hopefully, you don't have to deal with it.
Okay, me and my family are coming down to stay with you, and we're gonna
bro, come
homestead together. Yeah, as I say, dude, this has been incredible. Can I ask you like a few more questions that
I have as much time, and I don't want to also punish you and make this a 4-hour thing. But I have all night Billy Jack to sleep, so I have as long as you want to hang.
Okay, well, I definitely, one of the things I wanted to find out about, first of all, is Yoshihiro Devour from Devour Records. He's the spiritual advisor for Wrecking Crew. Was he still involved with Wrecking Crew when you were in the band?
He was. He was just a dude who was awesome.
Okay.
He was just a dude who was awesome. Everybody loved, and yeah, he was probably on the way out. I mean, because that's the thing is like Wrecking Crew really sort of, I mean, because Dean and I moved, you know, Dean and I have been in Boston for a while. We played in this band Kildren, right? With the drummer was the brother of Bernard who plays bass in Throwing Muses, which is like the most Boston thing I can say because everyone's just connected somehow. Isn't that awesome? Maze. And we're doing really interesting stuff, man. It was like really fucking cool. And then we played with Wrecking Crew, and they were like, afterwards, you know, hey, let's talk. We want to talk to you afterwards. Excuse me. And I was like, all right. And Dean and I were stoked. We're like, oh man, maybe they want to bring us on tour or something. Like, awesome, cool. And we went to talk to them, and then they wanted me to try out to sing for them, which is weird because I was hanging out with Glenn. Like I was never tight with the Wrecking Crew dudes before. Like, and Keith Bennett's awesome. And he was just one of those punk and hardcore dudes that would talk to anybody when they'd come. He just like knew everyone. He was like that guy. And one of the few people that went from metal to punk that I 100% will always respect in that manner. Yeah. But so we played, and I told Dean, I was like, yo, man, if this happens, like, don't worry. Like I'm going to get you in the band, right? Dean was my boy. I'm going to get you in the band somehow. Cause they had some weird Hesher, like, metal dude playing guitar. I'm like, if I'm gonna be in this band, that dude's got to go. And so I did. I tried out, and I'll tell this story. It's up to you whether you want to leave it in or not. But I was supposed to. We're gonna try out. We're gonna rehearse on a Sunday, right? They're gonna try me out on a Sunday, and so on a Saturday we all go to Portland, Maine. This place Zoots, right? And we go down and hang out with a bunch of friends down there, and even think about these. Actually, a few of them are dead now. Actually, I'm thinking about the story. And we play, and it's like a dance night, right? It's like a dance night, and we're like, cool, we're hanging out, and there's this there's these two women, one of which we knew, we're all hanging out, and this one girl would not give me the time of day, and I was like, I'm like, all right. And this is when Smells Like Teen Spirit was just taking over the world. Right.
Yeah.
And so we knew they were going to play this song. And I'm like, yo, when they play this song and these fools like try to get a little mosh in, let's just like murder everybody. Right. So we're like, you know, so we're there, and it starts, you know, and it just right, the drums kick in. And then all of a sudden this girl won't pay me any mind, starts dancing with me. And I was like, oh shit, dude, it's like, change the plans. I'm like, Ixnay on the murder name, but it was like too late. Everyone's killing everybody. So she's like, oh my God, what's going on? I'm like, I don't know what's going on. This is terrible. We should leave. So we leave, and it was them and my friend John Bozak, who along with Jocko Willink, does all of for Jocko's books, which you should all be reading Jocko's books. And John does all of the illustrations. But we went and hanging out with this girl, and it was like the worst because she was just like a huge Red Hot Chili Peppers bands just playing them over, which is like just torture in its own right. And so we hung out as like young people do. And then the next day we're going back, and my mouth, it kind of feels like a little weird, like a little tingly. I'm like, all right, feels like a little hornet's nest, like kind of strange. And then we're driving back, and by the time we get to New Hampshire, it felt like I had like broken glass in my mouth. It was like the weirdest thing, and in my throat. And then by the time we get to like, we're there, I'm pulling up to this Wrecking Crew rehearsal audition. my mouth is all white and cracked and fucked up. I don't know what crazy, weird yeast infection thing I got in my mouth. It was terrible. So I could barely talk while I'm trying to do this wrecking. I could barely talk, never mind sing. And it was god awful. And I don't know why they chose me in the band. I actually had to come back because they realized it was really awful. And I remember asking them about it. I'm like, yo, what do you think this could be caused by? And then I learned, I'm like, oh, from their reaction, which is so Puritan, I'm like, oh, we probably live very different lives. We probably live very different lives, guys. And but that was it. And then I tried out again. I got in Wrecking Crew. It was the worst thing that ever happened to that band. I got Dean in about 2 months later. And we just went out and we had a blast for a while, even though those dudes, like I said, would play Pantera and fucking listen to metal and fucking steal my soul again while I was trying to listen to like Drop Dead or something and tune them all out. But yeah, but Yoshihiro, so he was sort of at the end, he was around, but he wasn't as involved as he was like in that kind of early Wrecking Crew days.
It's amazing when you look at like the stuff that label put out. It's just like it's so like we were talking about earlier, the confluence of all these people. Like here's this guy in Boston who, puts out, a bunch of early Boston bands, has this connection to Wrecking Crew. And then at the same time, it's going back to Japan and involved in this incredible Japanese stuff that's also happening at the same time. All the Japanese stuff. And power violence.
Which is way cooler, dude. Which is way cooler. I was more into that stuff. Yeah, no, totally, man. Totally.
I also wanted to find out Intent to Injure. You guys were connected with them too, right?
Were we?
They have a FSU fight song on one of their 7-inches.
Oh my God. Who was in that band? I don't know. I have to Google that right now. It wasn't it's like when Slapshot also had an FSU song, which is why they couldn't play their own hometown for, close to a decade. And they also put me and Shabo, who's dead, on the back of the record cover. I think of the album, you can only see me because they cropped it, but on the CD, you can see Shabo as well in the middle of an awesome brawl, as if we would put together a song called, LOSER, and then our faces on their fucking record. But so I'm not sure. I'm not sure if this was a positive one for us or a negative one. But I don't know. I might be just completely ignorant, and they might actually. Who the fuck was Intent to Injure?
It would have been like 89 or something. That single came out 90 maybe. It's on Nemesis Records. It's like I think it's their second 7-inch. But anyway,
I remember the name of the band, but I actually don't remember their.
They're kind of raging. Like they're one of those bands, like you're saying, like Drop Dead, like that was like doing fast, kind of old style hardcore. Even at the time,
FSU Coalition taking out racists. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah. Like, I don't think it's a negative song.
No, it doesn't. Sounds like an awesome song. I 100% and probably know their friends are like, this is probably my own brain just being too far removed. So I'm not sure, but I will actually do some research on this now.
What I guess that's the last thing I want to talk to you about, comes up there is the idea of like, you parsed it earlier with the idea where being a skinhead was a thing. And then at a certain point, this sort of neo-Nazi virus spreads.
Yeah.
And it happens in England first, like you can almost track it as it happens, and then it eventually comes to America and spreads. And I was just wondering how that kind of manifested itself in Boston, because that ultimately, I guess, leads to your involvement in FSU, right?
Yeah, man, it was weird. Like I had a when I was locked up, there was this dude that was in the older ward, right? And he was a punk dude, Mike Neal. And I remember like when I was like 13 or something, I don't know. And I'd make these stencils. Like I made like a circle jerk stencil and I'd put it outside like your kind of like room / whatever it was, like cell, but kind of like a room because we were kids. And so he'd walk by and see it when his unit was being moved. And totally just wanted this guy to think I was cool because he was like 16 or 17. And then, he got out before I did. And, years go by, but it's still like, this dude. And I was like, look for him at shows. And then at that Descendants show where my mom dragged me out, most humiliating, awesome thing ever. Yeah. But before that, I kicked this skinhead dude in the face. And Jim Martin, who does all the drawings and stuff, he did like a lot of the flyers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was actually him. He was like a skinhead for about, I don't know, like a day and a half or something. He got his fingers tattooed. And it was actually him. So we were like squaring off. And then some other skinhead dude who was my boy that I'd been locked up with years earlier. I mean, probably like 9 months earlier, it was Alf. And so he was a skinhead now, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to become a skinhead. And, Alf got me out of that situation. And then you go back, a few years and we go on, we're all skinheads, we're all hanging out. And I remember he went to Atlanta and I remember he came back and it was with Jocko and I, and he had Klan flyers. And I was like, bro, I'm like, how do you think this is a tan? Like, I was so confused about why he was trying to recruit me for the Klan. And then it just, so it wasn't even just like, oh, your brothers. It became like someone that was like your idol and hero. And then you're, fighting with people with with machetes in the fucking back of the Anthrax. And then it became like this whole other thing that we have to get rid of this. So it really was. It became like a civil war. And then the birth of the fence walker, for sure. It still exists to this day.
Yep.
It was a tumultuous time, because then there's the other element where you had sharp skins, and I kind of hated sharp skins, right? I kind of hated this like idea of, I love the idea of it, and we had this very same mentality, but it just became something that, to us, it was just like, oh, these dudes just shaved their mohawks last week. When the truth of the story is I just shaved my mohawk about, a year and a half ago or something, But yeah, it was a really, really weird time. And it was funny when that shit happened with homeboy from YDL, from Youth Defense League, when he kind of got outed. And I remember reaching out to him. And there's no excuse for that shit. Obviously, it's very public. I went to prison for it. It's very public of where I stand on this. But also, this was a really kind of weird, confusing time. I'm not even confusing. That's not even, it sounds like confusing isn't the right word. It was just like a weird time where we were mixed together. Right. And it wasn't as black and white as things are now. And you'd be into this, and you'd be a black skinhead and into Youth Defense League. And there's and I don't know, having been in it, I don't know if the light's been turned on, because we were killing Nazis then. Like, we were getting rid of Nazis. I don't know the lights, but then the lights turned on now years later, like, oh no, it is this clear, or things were just really kind of fucking messy then. And I just remember reaching out to him like, yo, you and I were always on opposite sides, but I know what you've done with your life now. And it wasn't even just like condone, just like, that's it. Like, yo, I see you. I know you changed. Like, this sucks. And he wrote back in a beautiful way of like, yo, man, I had this coming. Like, I can't, I take full responsibility for this, and however it's going to upend my life now. But it was sort of a nuance. I mean, you have bands coming from New York with, white bands you love with people of color in the band, and their roadies were Nazis. You know what I mean? The 80s were a very strange time. And I think just towards the end, when it came very, very clear of like, oh no, we are on this side, you're on that side. And then it got more by the time the early 90s came around, late 80s, early 90s, when FSU was around, then it became very black and white. The 80s was a little cloudy at times. Because you're doing weird shit, like I'd wear screwdriver shit all the time to try to draw Nazis out. You'd beat up a dude, get a screwdriver shirt, and then you'd wear it out and try to get someone to be like, yeah, rad shirt. You can punch him in the face. It's just like strange times. But then in the early 90s, especially around FSU, it became very, very clear, like, oh no, this is a poison. This needs to be out for good.
I think that's like it's so fascinating when you look back on that stuff, like you're saying, like the extreme politics that were coexisting, especially in New York, where you could have Nausea and YDL on the same comp,
100%
playing shows together.
100%. I think that's something and again, this is not excusing it by any means. Like, I hope my track record doesn't sound like I'm ever, sitting on that fence, because it's very clear what side I am and will always be on, just even from my fucking DNA and melanin in my skin. But it was just messy. It was like a messy time. And these are people that you're with, you'd been through hell with. They were your brothers. You'd discovered punk rock together. You'd had Silly Mohawk, like all of it. You'd grown up together. And it was really in the late 80s, and it did become a civil war. And I think by the time the early 90s came around, in certain places, and there were these strongholds, when we played with Agnostic Front, with the Wrecking Crew, Maddie and I talk about it all the time, is when he was in the band, Roger had just gotten out of prison. The One Voice tour, which is, fucking gold, great record. And it's funny, I get out of prison, I think about Roger a lot. because what it must have been like for him. Because I know what it's like to try to get back and back in the world, and just everything just changed, right? The world's gone on. The world's moved on without you. And you're kind of stuck. And it's like, in some ways, it's like being Huck Finn or Tom Sawyer at your funeral. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's just weird. When I got out, it was like Instagram had happened. Just so weird. I remember Chad from Newfound Glory talked about a dude I've known since he was 14 years old from when we toured Big Block. And he actually got on our bus. It was a Winnebago, but from Dean's dad, because Dean's dad was an auto body guy. But talking about FSU, you guys are from Boston? I hear those FSU guys are awful. I hear they're real jerks. I was like a record scratch. I'm like, what'd you say, kid? And he's been one of my best friends ever since. But getting out, he was telling me like, yo, I got, something that happened because he liked something on Instagram. I'm like, what the fuck's Instagram? I'm like, oh, I got, it's this thing. And I liked this thing. I'm like, well, how does someone know you liked something? I was so confused. I wasn't gone that long. Everything's moved so fast. So I think you could see that in Roger, who Roger was before. And then now he's obviously back, but he was right out when we were on that tour. And just seeing him try to like assimilate back and this like look in his eyes. But we played Allentown, Pennsylvania, man, and that shit was crazy. And that's actually that show. We had issues with New York. We had issues with Kev One. We had issues before this. And then there was like we played, we're all up. It was Agnostic Front, Life of Agony, Sheer Terror, Wrecking Crew. And we played this place, I think it's called the Airport Music Hall. I don't know, that might be wrong. But there's an upstairs. And we're up there, we're hanging out. I'm coincidentally enough reading the autobiography of Malcolm X for like the 15th time, because that's how I learned about straight edge. That's how I became straight edge, just from that book.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
When I was locked up, I was like, oh man, I'm not going to be a pawn for the system. Like, fuck that. And, reading that, and then someone's like, yo, there's a strip club there. And so you could look into this strip club if you went into this weird part of the attic. So you have all these guys in these 2x4s, and some of them are grown-ass men. Like some of us are kids, some of us are grown-ass men in a line, like little rascals tapping each other on the back. Hey, you've been too long now. It's my turn now. To peek in over the stage, you really couldn't see anything. And like the silliest, most innocent, most ridiculous thing. And then someone comes running up. We could hear the ground vibrate every once in a while. I didn't really think, I think like a band was starting to play. And then all of a sudden someone runs up like, you guys come now. And we had heard about Nazis in Allentown, and I'd showed up with my boy John, who grew up with me and Jocko, I talk about a lot, and he'd come and we'd heard about Nazis, and we saw kids waiting outside the show. And this one dude, there's this chubby dude with these huge fat braces, right? And like this swastika armband. We're like, this is what everyone's afraid of? Like, are you kidding me? I'm like, all right, whatever. So then, fast forward 2 hours later, and 1/16th of a strip show later, whatever, you could see the top of someone's head, and we all go out to sort of this balcony, and there was like, Matt and I talked about it. It was like 500 people. It's probably like 200 to 300 people, all sig heiling at once.
Holy fuck.
And dude, it was the most ugly, but most beautiful in the way of seeing human, like all doing one thing at once. It like literally made your stomach, like your bowels just like go. It was like the weirdest thing of like such horror and ugliness, but beauty at the same time. Cause you have even these girls, with fringes, these young teenage girls like rocking back and forth with this big swastika flag while everyone's screaming, Sig Heil, Sig Heil. And we're like, oh, fuck. Oh, this is what everybody's talking about. So we went back into this area, we could look into the strip club, and they were finding like 2x4s, finding out everything we'd find for this, for weapons. And Life of Agony was on next, right? And you had a dude from that band, like one of their cousins or something, and me were like the only people of color in the whole fucking place. And like, I remember we go out to the stage, and there's sort of like this barricade there. We're standing there, and we know we have pipes, we have whatever else that we found. Vinny was there. Roger actually wasn't, because his squat burned down. It was like a terrible night. His squat burned down that same night. And then we found out that our friend Castle Neck Mike had shot and killed his girlfriend disgustingly. Talk about damage. And then boarded himself up in his apartment, and then shot himself while the police were trying to break in, all in this one night. But we were there, didn't know anything, didn't know about Mike, didn't know about any of this at this time. And playing, and they saw me. I remember like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, like I know it was an older movie, the 70s movie.
Oh yeah.
They were like pointing at me and like losing their fucking minds, man. It was crazy. Like, there's one right there. And there's like another one, you know, someone from Life of Agony that was like on the cusp, like a little lighter skin than me. And yeah, dude, it was fucking crazy. And then the Sieg Heil, fuck New York, Sieg Heil. And they kept pushing and pushing. They broke down one barricade and it fell on the drummer from sheer terror. I mean, it was like so crazy. I mean, that dude, they're like, no judgment on anyone. They're fucking tears. Like there was like absolute fucking terror. And then dudes that we've been beefing with before, particularly Kev One, DMS, all rolled up, and we were in the front, just like swinging and hitting these people, pushing them back and pushing them back. And that's, for me, to be in that situation with those people, with these dudes, that stopped any fantasy New York Boston beef that ever had happened before. You know, this was like, we'd been there together. We'd been through fucking war together at that point, and that killed that shit immediately. Where did we end up in that story, man?
I guess I was talking about the rise of the Nazi stuff, but
that's it. Yeah, that was, so we're that many years later, dude. I mean, that was whatever year that was, 92. I'm not sure when. That was 92. And that when we're still dealing with that. You know what I mean? That was you're still dealing with it right now. This is the difference. That it's so weird. That's become so. I got outed at one point. There was something that came out, and I got doxxed, right? And it was on like one of those white power websites, right, where they said where I lived, and they said to go kill me and rape my race traitor wife, because my wife is Caucasian. And they had the wrong address, because I guess they did like a Spokio search or something like that. So luckily they had the address of some dude, you know, who lived somewhere in like the Inland Empire or something, and was randomly like something, I don't know, it was like 50 something years old at that point. I'm like, fuck, how old do I look? But then when the shit happened with Trump and everything else, like Rachel Maddow had directly linked that message board to Steve Bannon. And it's just like, so it's like living in a fever dream, right? It's like crazy living in a fever dream. And it even happens with our friends our heroes that we grew up with. And sometimes that's why social media is also so toxic and fucking negative, man, of the addiction to being triggered and to being emotionally triggered, right? And these things that you know, I was talking to someone the other day about it. We've known each other for decades, and I've always in punk rock, we're in this thing. I mean, maybe my beliefs have always been very to the left. And his more like, I think a lot of people from, you know, the New York area are probably more conservative. Mm-hmm. But then now it's like this huge gulf has happened. And one thing I said is just like, because there's a lie that people like hide behind. It was a beautiful conversation. It was like a brotherhood conversation, two brothers talking, which is rare these days. But I was like, yo, I get what you guys are saying. Yeah, because you hide behind all governments are fucked up. You're right, 100%. I agree with you. Yes. But I see you attacking Antifa, which is so weird. I see you attacking the left. I don't see you doing the same shit to the right, because you're saying we should take that for granted. We don't. You know what I mean? I feel like there has been this swing to this, which is like so fucked up. But anyway, the whole point of that to be was that this has all been a fucking fever dream. Like here I was thinking I've been out fighting Nazis, and this becomes part of your, you know, persona of what, you know, people believe in. There's obviously so much more darkness. And I could even talk with my friends and my brothers and what we created at that time. There's so much just like anguish and pain and darkness in there, right? That created this behavior. You think it's done, right? You think it's fucking done and it's over. And then it's on a whole other thing. And now it's mainstream. It's so similar to what we talked about with this, what happened in skinhead culture in America in the 80s and in England earlier, is now happened between, you know, you and your uncle. It happened to families. It's happened on this much bigger scale. It's so weird.
Well, it's even more, you know, to add your fever dream thing. It's like, it's even more weird when you add the Gavin McInnes angle to this whole thing.
Yes, I know.
Here's a dude coming from the same basement shows that's into the same bands. And yet he's like this zeitgeist of terrible shit now in the mainstream. Like, it's so fucking weird.
So weird, dude. And then stole our shirts, and I can never wear fucking Fred Perry again. I blame Canada on that one. I blame Canada on that one, bro. I think you got to take the hit. No, but you're right. That is 100%. That is so fucking, it is so weird. And then, but even these conversations have become like you have with normal people now, when normal people know about this stuff. Like when like there's no, and to me, I have my own prejudice always about that's the worst thing you could be to me is normal. Like people, I remember being with friends, you'd have like that normal friend that you grew up with, and I'd hang out and be like, "Yo, you're making me nauseous right now." You know what I mean? Yeah. I can't think of that mentality. But then now they've co-opted all of our shit. Now they've from ACAB to this other side of these normal, lame, mediocre white dudes have now co-opted this Fred Perry look and co-opted all this. Yeah, it's fucking weird, dude. I think you know what happened. You know what it is? I think this is what happened, bro. I think Fucked Up and Righteous Jams were on tour. I think we got hit by a Mack truck, and this is just a weird fever death dream we're having. Yeah, it can't be real.
I sometimes feel that legitimately in a way that I wish was far more joking than it is. But it kind of brings up what we were talking about earlier about this thing about punk that's also kind of amazing, where it is almost this fantasy myth building. You can build your own world, and that's what makes punk great, because you build your own scene. But that's what all those dudes have done, and they bought into Gavin's fantasy about what this fucking, like, Screwdriver is the ultimate cosplay band ever. When you look at the history of that band and get into like who these people were, it's not real. It's all just like, it's terrible, and that's a reality, but it's not real.
It's more fantasy, 100%. You're right. It's a fantasy to bring it back to that. They may as well be singing about fucking Dungeons and Dragons, but look at the damage that came out of that.
Yeah.
And you're right, with Gavin, with this uber macho fake masculine, like all that bullshit, like these weak men that fall into that is like so fucking gross, but also really fucking also terrifying of the damage. And you never thought you'd be scared of, you know, dudes in khakis holding fucking, you know, lawn torches or lawn fucking tiki torches. But then look what happens and then look what happens then. Looks what happens in Charlottesville. So, and the fact that they've co-opted something that means so much to us, that you've had now hundreds of people on to talk about from all walks of life, right? On your show about how this is it. This is the real culture beyond color, beyond your ethnic identity. Like this is, at least for me, this is my culture. This always will be. Like we have this language that has been co-opted with this, painted with this disgusting fucking brushes. Makes me want to punch people in the face again, honestly. I got to say, Damian, if anything's happened for this podcast, I think I'm going to regress. No. I think, I think I'm going to leave my mid-century modern house right now in the canyon and go punch some motherfucking Nazi in the face.
Well, you know, not to further stoke that flame, but you know, but I almost maybe to I don't know, put the flame out. I don't think that's possible. But at the same time, I think just to kind of bring it back to the trauma piece, like you look at what's his name, Nicky Crane, the head of Screwdriver Security. Mm-hmm. And you look at this guy's life story, where this is obviously a guy who was, you know, because it's all come out now. There's a BBC documentary about it where he was gay, and he was at the same time.
I did. Gay. I read that. Yep.
Yeah, and he was bashing men for being gay and attacking gay men. Like, so clearly, this guy's dealing with some intense trauma and inflicting this trauma on people that, no, once again, not justifying or excusing what he's doing. And he's a terrible human being, but it's just like, you know, but you don't hear Gavin bringing that up. You know, you don't hear that being brought into the conversation ever.
No, you're so true, dude. You're so true. Like how already it was so, even at its core, at its genesis is already broken. It's already rotten. Right. And it's not what you think of. And when they go to grab this fruit, it's actually just fucking rotting inside because it already started there. And it does. And that's what it does become complicated, because it's not excusing. You can understand where it comes from. You can have like empathy for that as opposed to sympathy. I know that's like a cliche, but it's really true. Like it is understanding of where this sort of pain comes from, and this inner torment. And then what that looks like when it comes out in this horrific way. With really, that dude just could have loved who he wanted. If he could have verbalized that, you know, if he could have like, oh my God, the world, who knows what impact that had? Because I think I also used to get older, and I think listening back, even to like some of the podcasts, or not listening back, listening to them, it's like you start to notice certain threads. There's a couple, because Nancy mentioned it. I think Kevin Seconds has mentioned it, but it was like the Led Zeppelin tour where they got canceled. right? Because Roger Plant's son died.
Mm.
And then how that sort of changed their musical journey. You know, there's so many little steps. I know it's like sort of like the butterfly effect, but it's really true. So you think about if you take out these certain things of what would have happened, I think as you become older, now you have families like we have, that it also becomes very like you just change something else and something could be different. So if you change, you know, whatever impact, whatever comfort they felt having some savage like Nicky Crane, you know what I mean? And having that guy front and center, like maybe everything fucking changes. Who knows?
Yeah, no, it definitely. Well, or if men were able to express intimacy with each other, and
Yeah.
like or like all these things, like it's just, I don't know. It's a. This has been an incredible
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah, dude. If I could have, if someone could have, I could have understood that, then maybe I wouldn't have heard "I Love You" for the first time after I just beaten up one of my favorite bands, the Meatmen. You know what I mean? So I like that. Like maybe I could have just heard that years earlier, and then I could have just been like, "Oh man, I finally get to see Tesco V. This is awesome." Instead, you know, history changed.
Yeah, yeah. Well, once again, this has been one of the great kind of conversation I've gotten to have on this thing, and you're always welcome back. But last thing before I let you go, Robert Redford. I was reading in Vanity Fair about your, I guess, a mentorship with Robert Redford, and once again, that to me is mind blowing. First of all, does he like punk? Second of all, how did that whole like thing come about, that relationship?
Dude, I came out here and I'll tell you know the quick story. But I came out here, my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, we packed everything we had in our van. I had to get the fuck out of Boston. I'd made promises to my mom. And I'm sorry. And I know that everything happened really quickly with your mom. And I'm so sorry. I'm glad that she got to see you accomplish stuff, but I'm sorry that you didn't get more of that goodbye.
I think that, but not to derail it, but I think that's also, I think there's no good way to lose the mom. And I think,
right.
I look at the alternative, and I've looked at friends that went through the alternative, and granted, you do get that preparing, you're never prepared, obviously, but like you get that sort of, moment with them still. And I didn't get that, but at the same time, because it happened the way it happened, I think it was almost like the Band-Aid came off quick. I don't know. There's no, it seems so weird to try and put this in these terms, but like,
right.
Like I really do look at it like I think she would have preferred it to be the way she went. Like,
yeah. That makes sense. I think you're right. There's no good way. Obviously there's no good way, but there is something about, it's awful either way. I mean, when my mom got, she and this will tie into the story, I promise. But I was on tour and we are playing New Jersey or something, and I got the call that she was in the hospital. She'd already beaten cancer twice, and so I went to go see her. But I went to the city, right? And I was going to take the train to the city. From the city to see her. And I was walking up and down because I'm like, I have fucking tattoos. I'm a dirtbag. I'm a piece of shit. And my mom's dying. And I'm like, I don't want the nurses. My mom's going to be embarrassed of me, but she never would have been ever. But in my head, I'm like, I want to, I got to grab a shirt. So I'm going to like H&M. I'm trying to find a shirt, and I have a lot of, money. I'm trying to buy a shirt for like, for the $36 that I have. That can cover my tattoos. And I look and I'm doing it's taking forever. And I end up missing my train. So I have to take a later train. So by the time I get there, visiting, I have like 20 minutes to visit with her. And it was even less. And that's why my sisters were looking like I was a fucking dirtbag because I was late. My mom wouldn't care, but I was so fucking embarrassed that I was like, I was a dude in a gang on tour, living with 8 people, just nothing for her to ever be proud of. And so I only got those last 15 minutes with my mom. And then that night is sort of, she lost the ability to sort of speak. And I got to spend the next 3 weeks with her in the hospice, but I made that promise. Like I was going to change my life. I was going to change things. I'd literally just started dating this girl in my band. And I promised like, I'm going to do these things. I'm going to become something to be proud of. And she did squeeze my hand. So I do think that she could, heard. And it was 3 weeks of just watching. And you're right. I think there's no good way, because then it took a long time to get rid of that visual imprint. But at the same time, man, you're right. There's no good way.
Yeah.
It's only awful. But then I went back to Boston. I'm like, yo, I got to make these changes. And then it was really hard still living there. I couldn't, because then you get a call at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. from your brother. And I'm like, oh, I got to go handle this. I got to do this. And I'm like, yo, I really got to get the fuck out. And there's funnier stories we can get into later about how we did it, including beating up, trying to get a camera. And Girls Gone Wild were on the street once on Lansdowne Street. And I'm like, because I want to figure out how to make a movie. I'm like, oh, let's just go beat them up and smash their cameras. And we weren't the first person to think about it, because they had these coaxial cables. And it's a funny story. And my friend Colin of Arabia, and I'm sure you know Colin, is just like fucking legend. But anyway, I'm like, I got to get the fuck out. So we did. We finally packed everything we had into a van and drove out to LA with our dog Myra, and get out here. Like, how the fuck do you make movies, man? I don't know how to make movies. I don't know anybody in this town. And there's a guy who'd actually been this kid, Jeff Palkovich, but he'd always given out free records, and he played a little bit with the Boss Tones. So I kind of met up with him and talking to him, and they're like, oh, this story about your life. And long story short, and this film got put together with Nick Cassavetes was going to direct. And I was, his mom, Jenna Rollins, is my favorite actresses, and obviously his dad, Nick Cassavetes. And Justin Timberlake was going to play me, which is just so ridiculous. And there's such a different time. So I'm like, yo, that dude's white. And they're like, the studio's like, yeah, but he's kind of got like a brother card. I'm like, hi, I'm like, I guess so. I'm like, are you sure? But anyway, long story short, and I was just like, I'd feel so sick to my stomach, and I'd have to go tell these stories when we went to go pitch it before we ended up at Fox about, people I love dying, about my mom dying, and I was just like I say this a lot, but I was like the dumb gang guy in the room to give it a little credence. I'm like, yeah, I smashed this dude in the face with a brick. And then, my friend Danny died, and it fucked me up. And then my mom died, and we get sick every time. And so finally I was like, you know what, fuck this. I'm just going to do this myself, because I was going to write or direct. And I'm like, fuck this. I'm going to write it myself. I was repped at William Morris, which is obviously a big agency out here. And then I told them, and I called up my agent. I'm like, yo, man, fuck this. I'm going to write this shit myself. Everyone thinks I'm crazy. My girlfriend is the only one who believes in me. And then I was no longer repped at William Morris, because they didn't believe in me either. And I was just like, fuck, well, how do I do this? And I want to tell a story about me and my best friend. My best friend Bruce, that I brought up a couple of times, and just like what happened to us with these New England kids that end up in Boston, and like just our friendship, and all of it, man. And I'm trying to talk about male intimacy, and I'm like, I don't know how to do this, man. And we were in the Salton Sea, because we'd read in this book about California, don't go to the Salton Sea after dark, it's scary. So my girlfriend at the time, maybe my wife at this point, was like, yeah, let's go. And we went, and it was like dusk, bro. And there's this girl on the back of this dude's bicycle, and she was like probably 14, and she had cigarettes rolled up in her sleeve, and she's sitting on the back pegs. And I was like, oh, I know her. Like, that's me. Like, you can see the fire in this girl, but she's probably going to just die in this town. And that's fucking what I was in my small town, man. I just craved concrete. I craved cement. I craved the city. And I was stuck around, I was listening to fucking, like I said, conflict, saying you're nicked to my fucking pigs. You know what I mean? My sheep. And then I got out in the world, and it chewed me up and spat me the fuck out. It fucked me up. You know what I mean? It devoured me. And what I wouldn't do, and I've said this a lot too, like what I wouldn't do to be able to go back and be playing in the backyard and have my mom call me in. You mean to be out singing conflict to the pigs and sheep, Yeah. I'd give everything in the world for that. So here was the story. So I wrote this thing. And then obviously when a weird ex-gay or gang member writes a script about two 13-year-old girls, like no one cares. No one gave a fuck. And it died, and it got into the hands, long story short, of Robert Redford and this woman, Michelle Satter, who run this Sundance Feature Lab. And they changed my life. They plucked me out. They changed my life. I went to the labs, which is this thing, and a lot of people way more talented than me, from, Paul Thomas Anderson, Quentin Tarantino, et cetera. I've gone through the same program. And usually people have, like, obviously, like, everyone there had their MFA, everyone else had, like, had their masters, people had already done films, and I was the only one who hadn't. And you go there, and it was the first time I never brought a weapon anywhere, to go to this mountain that Robert Redford owns, a big chunk of, in Utah. And I was packing, and I'm like, all right, well, I have my padlock, and then I have my bandana. I'll put them separate. And I'm like, oh, I probably don't need this. Which sounds funny, but it was like kind of terrifying. I'd never gone anywhere without some sort of weapon since I was a kid. And And that happens to go back to violence, not to backtracks. I knew I said this would be a short story, but I completely 100% lied. And I apologize. Sorry.
Go on, man. Don't worry. No. But no, like the violence is a drug, like you're saying. Like it's hard to let that thing go.
It's hard to let that go. And I learned being the victim of it as a kid, of looking at my little boy, and that's how it breaks you and heals you at the same time. Because I look at him and I'm just like, how could someone damage something? Like, how could someone do the things that happen to you? How could someone do that to this child, to this innocence, to like, yeah, I mean, it's hard. Obviously, having a kid is hard, but that it makes you, I don't know if it's been like this at all with your relationship. But it becomes very much like, oh, I get it. It's hard, but also fuck you. Like, fuck you.
Yeah, it definitely changes the way like anyone that hurts a child now, like it's, you always are like, well, those are terrible human beings, but
right.
It adds an added dimension to it.
Adds 100, and even if that just means just leaving. Even if it means just leaving, you know what I mean? Never mind even beyond that physically and violently, but even just emotionally, I agree. So I let my thing and I show up and everyone's really smart. Everyone's super smart. And being from Boston, everything is always like, oh, you think you're better than me? Oh, you fucking think you're better than me? Oh, with your fucking big headphones on, Damian, you think you're fucking better than me? And that just all came up because everyone was better than me. Everyone was smarter than me. And I was like, yo, I need to not fuck this up. Like, just fucking chill. And I went the other way. I was too nice. You have all these advisors. What happens? You have all these people very, very accomplished and done all these things, and they give you their, they go through your script with you and stuff. And I was taking it. I'm like, oh my God, yes, thank you. Oh, that's so, oh my God, you did this. Oh yes, thank you. And just like bending over backwards, twisting yourself in a pretzel. Cause I only know how to be one thing or the other. I didn't know how to be somewhere in the middle. And the woman who runs it with Robert Redford took me aside and she's just like, yo, you need to be fierce. Like, we know you don't know everything, but you're punk rock. You know this in your gut. Just listen to your gut. It was the most important thing anyone's ever said to me. And so when I sat down with Robert, and because one other thing that happened, this is in the director's lab, which came second, but basically what happens, they have a whole day that's just cinematography, right? And this amazing Hungarian filmmaker named Gyula Gazdag, and he teaches everything about cinematography and all these things. And he's talking about lighting, and he's saying like, hey, when you do this, your grip will take care of this. And I was like, all right, man, like this is my shot. Like, this is where I can really grow, because I don't know what the fuck a grip is. So I'm going to raise my hand. I'm going to ask him what a grip is. My fears, everybody's going to laugh. There's no way everyone's going to laugh. Obviously, this is a safe space. They keep telling me this. So I raise my hand. I'm like, Gyula, I'm like, what is a grip? I actually don't know, bro. And everyone fucking laughed. Everybody in the room fucking laughed at me because they thought I had to be joking, right? Yeah. Why the fuck are you here? And to this point then Robert Redford and this woman, Joan Darling, who I won't punish everyone with, but she's an amazing mentor. And she was the first female television director. So she really took me under her wing. She's like, yeah, you may not know everything. I'm going to teach you everything I can. She's like, but I was a woman. Imagine that. In 1970. But with Robert, we had, it was phenomenal. So basically what happened, to answer your question, spent a lot of time with Robert Redford. And there's one lunch in particular, and I went and I wanted to just tell him that I deserved, that he didn't make a wrong mistake with me, or he didn't make a mistake with me. Right. I wanted to validate that I was there, that I don't know. He sat down with me and I'm looking at him and I, still missing my mom so bad. Just remember watching obviously The Sting and Butch Cassidy as a little kid, like in my head on her lap. It's just so many things at once. And then he's also Robert Redford, the most handsome man in the world, even at 70 or whatever he said. And just going and going and going, as obviously, I have through all this, and I apologize to get fired up.
Dude, don't worry.
And he's just like, first off, Elgin, you need to listen. And secondly, and I told him, we just talked about a bunch of stuff, and he's just like, you're stunted. He's like, when you're 7 years old, all the, this when I became vegetarian, obviously been vegan for, very, very long time. But when the animals were my only friends, like I said, I was getting called nigger and spick every time I went to school and out into this, farm town. And I'd come home, and especially the pigs, and Bubba, my one pig, is like my homie. They're my world. And then to see them rounded up and to get slaughtered, like, fucked me up. I was like, oh, adults are evil. And it fucked me up. And obviously, so I've always been, into animal rights and everything since. And then the same way of like my father's issues that he had with drinking and with chemicals, and et cetera, et cetera. And he just broke it down. He's like, everything you do is like you're just a stunted 7-year-old child. These are all things that happened to you as a child, and you're stuck in that. And you never paid attention to what your mom did, because my mom was a Quaker. Like my mom was this like amazing 100-pound. My dad was like almost 300-pound monster throwing tantrums, right? As like a child that would just come in and throw tantrums, and he'd throw tantrums over to bring it back to this, to the records I was listening to, this, to everything, was an affront to him. And my mom was this quiet woman. When our sheep would die in the winter, because we can afford grain, we end up losing the farm. We were, they didn't have the $12,000 to pay for the taxes that they owed, so we lost the farm. And she was out there in the winter, this 100-pound woman with a shovel digging into the dirt, because she didn't want me to know, because she knew how upset I'd be. And he didn't want to have me to do it when I was 9 years old. So he was like, you've missed the whole time, because you're so obsessed with what you didn't get or what your father did. You didn't pay attention to your mother. He's like, you're at a choice. You're at a crossroads. And I've been talking about violence and like, oh, sometimes this is what has happened. There's violence created the world and all this bullshit. And he was just like, yeah, you're at a crossroads, man. He's like, you got to make a choice. You can still continue to be a child, because what happens is you're 7, and then all of a sudden you're 19 and you're a grown man, and you're still trying to punish the world for what happened to you when you're 7. And all of a sudden you're 27 years old, and you're sitting here in front of me, and you're still talking about violence. And you're still talking about how some people have it coming. And, the whole thing about giving the karmic wheel a nudge when people get all that bullshit. And he's like, you can do that. He's like, you can follow your mom. You can be an artist. It's on you. And it was the most generous, crazy thing. Plus it was from Robert Redford. So anything he said was going to get through. But that's a man who does not waste a time. He's someone when you ask, hey, how you doing? He's going to tell you exactly how he's doing. He's incredibly shy. Incredibly shy, man. So our bond was very real. And I took a vow of nonviolence on that mountain with him, and it fucking changed my life completely. And then I came home, and I was about to go to another lab through them for a composer lab. And then we just had budgeted my film Little Birds at $1.5 million. We just found all the money. And I went out to walk my dog, because I was going to work with a composer later. He's going to come over at 2. It was like 1 o'clock. I walked out. I'm walking my 2 dogs, Chopper and Nell. And then all of a sudden, it was like a CBS procedural. And FBI agents came out of nowhere. Like, I got caught slipping. I'm in like Robert Redford world, I'm like, it's Sundance. I'm like, I'm an artist. And then all of a sudden, it was just your Mr. James. They had their guns drawn. They had the bulletproof vest. They had FBI and their windbreakers. I was just like, oh, it's all gone. Man, that was going to be really cool. It's all gone now. But through all of that, through the case, through everything, Robert Redford and the Sundance Institute stayed with me through prison. They're the ones sending me books, sending me letters, when everyone else sort of like died off, of course, because that just happens. It's no judgment. It just happens. And they always stayed out, and they've always been home. So that's it. Robert Redford, this man who I watched growing up with my mom, completely is the person who changed and in many ways saved my life.
That's amazing. And it's also kind of like, I guess, reflective of what we're talking about, punk in general being this sort of like, confluence of like art meets street. Like here you are transcending to the art side of things, and there's also the street side of things still part of your life at this point.
Yeah, and he was a brawler, dude. He's a dude from Long Beach. And that's to the point of that. He was really blue collar and really working class, and that's his mentality. And so I don't know if he is into punk rock, probably not. Yeah. But there's something when you talk to him, he's not a movie star. He's very much like this is how because it's DIY, right? That's what it all is. That's what Sundance is. Sundance is just DIY in another level. This dude started a festival when one didn't exist like it in the world, because he wanted real art to be shown and real films to be made. And he made the Institute because he didn't want to have it just be the Steven Spielbergs and et cetera of the world. He wanted to find filmmakers. There's an indigenous program. There's a trans program now. There's everything. And that they took a chance on me who had nothing. I had nothing to show that I had any worth in the world. And they took a shot at me, and that's fucking DNY. So basically that's his fanzine. Sundance Film Festival is Robert Redford's fanzine.
Well, and also now I can connect Robert Redford to Gigi Allen in 2 moves.
Fuck, bro. You're so right. Holy shit.
There we go. Dude, this has been incredible. And, anytime you want to come back on here, you're more than welcome.
Thank you, brother. I really, really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. Your podcasts are so amazing. Always feels like home listening to them. It always surprises me a lot of people that I didn't know or people that I kind of like, I don't know, it just feels you're keeping this thread and this connection alive with people. So thank you. And of course, my brother and my friend, congratulations on all of your success. It's so awesome. I love bragging about you.
Thank you, Elgin, for coming on the show. And you're right there. Elgin will be back for part 2 at some point in the future because, a lot more to talk about. Man, thank you for the kind words at the end, man. That was so nice of you. All right. And speaking of things coming up in a few short days, my friend, also Elgin's friend too, from the band H2O, a legend on Turned Out a Punk. Go back and listen to Chris Gethard's first appearance on the show to hear tale of it. And someone that was incredibly nice to me as a young person growing up, and a key kind of figure in shaping how I want to interact with people as someone in a band. Toby Morris will be on the podcast from One Life, One Chance podcast, from his, obviously the band H2O, from, he's Toby Morris. It's a legend. And this is it's a great conversation. I'm very excited for you to hear it. I feel like we're on a great streak right now here at Turn Out a Punk. We got a lot of fun episodes coming up and a lot of good ones. Thank you to Tristan. Shout out to Tristan for making a lot of this happen. Even Elgin. Elgin's like my friend, and he and I have had the hardest time putting it together. Tristan comes in, works with his people. Here he's on the podcast. So rekindling friendships. Thank you, buddy, for that. Love you, man. All right. That is it for today's episode. Remember, as always, Black Lives Matter. The lives of Indigenous peoples matter. We need to protect trans kids. We need to help trans people protect themselves and stop hate and violence towards Asian people and people of different faiths. And just, we need to stop that kind of hate because it's not, this isn't political. This is human rights issues. Like this is far beyond political. This is how important people just need to be able to live their lives as best they can, We also on this podcast, obviously, should go without saying, respect people's rights to choose what they want to do with their reproductive systems. And so go out. If there's organizations that are doing work in any of these areas that you support or feel like need support, lend your support. It could be financial. It could be just your time. Could be, it could be anything. So, sign your organ donor cards because by the time they come looking for those organs, you don't need them. It's just literally dead weight in your body, So why the fuck not? They don't come in that you need them. It's not like that Monty Python sketch that you can't do this on television ripped off. Yeah, I saw you. You can't do that on television. I knew what you'd do. I knew what you were doing the whole time. Ripping off Monty Python sketches and forcing them on Canadian kids, expecting us not to know the shit. Anyway, sign your organ donor cards. Go there and make your own culture, to quote Tony Erba from Nine Chalks Terror. Anyone can do this shit. Anyone. Start a band, start a fanzine, I guess I paraphrased Tony Erba. I think he was saying more start a band, start a fanzine, if I remember what it was. But anyway, it'll help your mental health doing this stuff. And speaking of stuff that helps your mental health, try meditating. I came to it, There's also like a heavy duty other thing I want to talk about involving psychedelics, but I'll say that for a different podcast. It's for a different place. But meditating is strongly recommended. Nothing to do with psychedelics or anything like that. Just meditate. Try it. Who knows? It might not fucking work. I didn't think it was going to work, and it worked for me. And that's it. Stay safe. Thank you very much for listening, and I will see you on the next episode.